Big 12 Today with Ari and James. Monday through Friday, 8A to 11A Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
And away we go on a Tuesday. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temke. Great to have you with us today and every day here in your home for the Big 12. Tune in Big 12 Studios on a Takeaway Tuesday. Football is in the air. Yeah, exactly. In the 109-degree air of Dallas, Texas.
Smells a lot better than my Bath & Body hand sanitizer. Smell of football season.
That's right. You know, yesterday I was out as my older son Asher's first football practice. He's playing flag football this year. And it's pretty remarkable because he had not played flag football. And he comes to me about 6 months ago and he's like, hey, I want to play tackle football this year.
Tackle?
And I'm like, yeah, bro, you haven't even played flag football. Let's just start there.
Let's ease in.
And then eventually your mom will say no to tackle football, but at least we could start with you playing flag football. But I'm out there on the field. They're practicing. You've got a second grade team. You've got the fifth grade team. And then you've got the sixth grade team. And they were hitting. They had the pads going. They were running some Oklahoma drill next to us. And at the junior high, where my kid will eventually go, there's a huge track around the field. So you're just kind of walking around and surveying. And it was like, man, football is here. Like, this is it. It's the start of football. You've got flag football practice. You've got tackle football practice. You got the whole thing.
Man, I drove by a small college that was out in the open at their practice facility, full throttle practice, and felt the same way. Like, I drove by real slow, like I'm stalking them, but also it's kind of like the scene of a car accident where you don't really know how fast to go because you actually want to see what's going on a little bit. Like, what is this guy
Somebody's
doing?
honking behind you.
Is
Like,
this an Uber driver?
what are we doing here?
Somebody order Wingstop?
You're like tears streaming down your face. Just
like,
like
it's here.
Foo Fighters, There Goes My Hero starts playing.
It's here. Blasted Creed, rolled the windows down.
With arms wide open.
So, yeah, man, it's here. TCU's game notes are out for the North Carolina game. I'm a big game note guy. Even if I wasn't, like, calling some of these games, I would read game notes. I love game notes.
Okay.
There's just so much in there. All the storylines, all the stats, all the series history, all the what's happened in Dublin history, just everything you could need for this game is in this, like, 60-page document.
Yeah, usually I've gotten the document and just tossed it in the trash.
It's like a weekly Phil Steele college football preview magazine. I read them from start to finish.
Cover to
top
cover.
bottom. Cover to cover, man. I'm in.
Well, you are quite the nerd.
Now, tell me about it. Are your sons doing the mouth guard thing, and are they particular about that?
Well, you've got to do the mouth guard thing. They
It's
won't let you
required now.
practice or play in games without the mouth guard. Yeah.
But no, I
that's
thought
right.
it was just earrings.
But no, yeah, it's a big deal. The mouth guard, the gloves. I mean, it's not enough to just play the game,
Right?
right? I mean, you've got to look the part.
Yeah, totally. That's what it's all about. And I bought my kids like this college or this flag football package. Had the eye black, had the arm sleeves, had the wristbands, had the mouth guards.
Sounds like the only thing you really need from that is the mouth guards. How much was it?
Not much.
Okay, good.
Amazon. Come on.
Flag football package. It comes with everything.
Come
for
on.
$75.
Oh,
It's
no,
like,
no.
All you needed
We're
was
not
the mouth
running
guard.
down to Academy Sports.
All you needed was
Okay.
the mouth guard for $18.
These
right?
were made in a lab in Taiwan. But the mouth guards, turns out I didn't get the right ones.
Oh.
Like, apparently the kids want the real aggressive mouth guards that basically, like, cover from the bottom of your nose to your chin. I just got a traditional, almost like a retainer-style mouth guard,
So
which is not good enough.
my son's fifth grade team, they all have the other one. I got Asher the big one, and now I'm feeling like, well, he looks out of place. What do I do? They're all going to make fun of him for having this huge mouth guard.
I've outdone myself. I don't know. No, the huge mouth guards are very big in our league. So,
Huh. It's quite the opposite on our team. They're very uncool, apparently.
yeah, I thought the little mouth guards were the way to go. Like the more sleek mouth guard that it's in there, but you don't necessarily notice it's in there until you give your defender a big smile after you've hit stick them for a gain of 20.
That's right. You want to smile when you've pulled their flag and you stand over them as opposed to the full mouth. It's like I can't even see what expression he's making.
Exactly.
Yeah. Football is in the air. Something new that we've really never seen before. Adding new players to your roster in August, weeks before the season starts. That's what's happened for the Houston Cougars, and boy, oh boy, have they added a couple of players here. Stephon Johnson, Amari Thomas returns, and we figured, this should be a pretty robust passing attack with an all Big 12 receiver. Amari Thomas led the Big 12 in receiving last year. Well, Stephon Johnson is an all Big 12 type receiver who was hurt through points of last year, and he's been granted an extra year of eligibility. So he's practicing now with the Cougs, back with his team. And then Miles Rouser, the all Big 12 safety from Arizona State. Late last night, we learned from Matt Zenitz that he had committed and signed with Houston. So the Cougs adding a safety, probably a spot where they didn't really need to add, but depth is always important. And we talked about Houston's depth or lack thereof as being a potential pitfall. And Stephon Johnson, I mean, when you think about the opportunity for Connor Wigman in this passing attack to add a guy like Stephon Johnson. Now, it remains to be seen what kind of shape they're both in. Johnson in some ways should be a little bit plug and play since he was here last year, but I'm sure some things are different. And we'll hear what Willie Fritz had to say to Joseph Duarte coming up in a moment. But, James, I mean, this is certainly something new to the sport, and, we see this in the NFL, so it seems very similar to that where you're adding players right up until the start of the season.
And this tells me that when we spoke with Eddie Nunez, the athletic director at Houston, he talked about the way they operate financially. To be able to add these two players and players of this caliber, you're not getting these guys for pennies on the dollar. It tells me that they had strategically set some money aside. And Miles Rouser, in terms of production, he's the better of the two. He is an high-impact, all-league safety who's really going to help that secondary that had some questions last year. But Stephon Johnson, he was hurt last year, so he only played in, I think, 5 games. He was able to preserve his red shirt. Maybe it was 2. But he was at Oklahoma State before Houston, highly touted recruit. But when he's been on the field, Houston 2 years ago, Willie Fritz's first year, when they weren't winning a lot of games, he was their only weapon offensively. He had 32 catches, over 400 yards, and then last year, he had a couple of touchdowns, but he averaged over 21 yards per catch when he was on the field. And in the 5 games, he had 13 catches, 275. But to me, the thing that stands out, he was responsible for 2 of Houston's 3 longest plays of the entire season. So he is their vertical stretch the field threat, where Amari Thomas is more that elusive route runner who's a guy that's just rock solid and consistent, but isn't necessarily a weapon over the top. Stephon Johnson changes everything for that offense.
Here's what Willie Fritz said from the Houston practice facility to Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle.
We're also excited. Stephon Johnson, Boogie Johnson is his nickname. We feel about as I didn't want to do anything until I was certain. This day and age, I'm not sure what certain is, but I think we feel pretty good about it. And he knows how we run a program, how we do things, and we're excited about having him back. Obviously, he's got to do a couple of helmet days before he can jump back into action, but really excited about it, and we feel, about as good as we can feel that he'll be eligible and be able to play for us this fall.
So Johnson's a huge add. Rouser is interesting because he brings depth. Now Rouser's been a tackling machine. He's a box safety, right? Like he's a heat-seeking missile. He's a guy that averaged over 100 tackles last 2 years at Arizona State. He went undrafted, was at minicamp briefly with the Seattle Seahawks. It's the pro day numbers, I think, as the reason for why he's not an NFL player. A 4.67 40, a 29-inch vertical, 10.3 broad, right? So the measurables are not exactly there for Rouser, but he's just a heat-seeking missile. I mean, 180 some odd tackles the last 2 seasons at Arizona State. And again, whereas Johnson fulfills a need immediately, Rouser seems more like depth because he overlaps with, a pretty good safety pairing already in Allen, and Webb, but more so Allen. Rouser plays that strong side safety, the box safety position that Allen plays.
Yeah, to me, he just adds another dimension to their defense. Because you're right, when you look at their projected starters in the secondary, you've got guys that were either starters last year or guys that were brought in as transfers to be starters. A guy like Jalen Mayo, who comes over from Tulane. Javion White was an FCS All-American at Stephen F. Austin. So this adds another depth piece to that secondary. With Stephon Johnson, he's going to be more plug-and-play because him and Connor Wegman have a relationship that runs deep. They have known each other since they were in grade school. They grew up playing 7-on-7 with each other. They were teammates all throughout their youth football days. And Stephon Johnson is the reason. He was the #1 recruiter for bringing Connor Wegman to Houston when he transferred from Texas A&M. So that relationship is going to make Stephon Johnson an immediate high-leverage impact guy who I think will be on the field day one. With Rouser, it just adds flexibility. Like, they use Brandon Mack as kind of a linebacker / edge rusher / safety. He's listed as a jack position. So he's all over the field, and that's kind of how I see Rouser. Rouser can blitz. Rouser can play linebacker. Rouser can be a 6th defensive back on the field. I just love the versatility that he brings to that defense.
Yeah, here's what Willie Fritz said about the health and status currently of Stephon Johnson.
He's 100%. He's come over here a few times and worked out. I just didn't want to do anything until we knew for certain, that this was going to be good. And the great thing about it is we're running the same offense. Basically, he's got the same coaches. So it's not going to be easy for him because he's 9 months behind. But he's a hard-working guy, and he'll do a great job.
Yeah, so 9 months behind, he mentions, but he's a hard-working guy. He'll do a great job. That's Willie Fritz, courtesy of Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle. And then here's what Fritz said about Johnson getting caught up to speed, being, quote-unquote, 9 months behind.
He's going to put his time, effort, and energy and earn his ability to play as much as he, wants to play. I'm sure he's got big-time goals, and we'll just see where it's at. So it's luckily we got a couple weeks before week 1, so he'll even though it's the same offense, he still needs to get back into terminology. There's some things we've tweaked. There's some plays we're running. It's different, personnel groupings, things like that. Signals, he's got to get back into that. But he'll do a great job. He's a smart young man.
All right, so James, with Stephon Johnson and Miles Rouser eventually being integrated into the team, does this change how you feel about the Big 12? We talked yesterday about the 7 different bowl projections from On3 and CBS Sports and ESPN and all the publications, and all of them basically had Houston somewhere between 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the league, but high, but not winning the Big 12 championship. 0 for 7 in the 7 that we looked at. Does this change that for you? Are they part of that Texas Tech, BYU upper echelon tier, or are they still kind of in tier 2 by themselves?
So I think in terms of roster construction and talent, yeah, I would put them up there. The thing that I just continue to circle back to is their schedule is so much more challenging than it was last year, that to have a similar record, they had to be better in terms of their talent. How much are these guys going to be on the field weeks 1 and 2 still remains to be seen. A lot of times transfers that come in, it takes them 4 or 5 games to get acclimated, to get a real grasp of the program and the playbook and alignments and communication styles and all those different things. With these guys getting such a late start, I don't know that you can count on them right away to be huge difference makers. So with Houston, in terms of their talent, yes. Like, I ran a chaos simulator, for lack of a better term, yesterday. Matt Enzor sent out some great notes on the Big 12 and just kind of the conference as a whole with the quarterback stuff that we've talked about at length. And so I'm thinking, all right, the Big 12's had 9 teams preseason ranked in the top 25 the last 2 years. Only one of those 9 has finished the year ranked in the top 25.
Wow.
So recent history tells me it's going to be another chaotic year. Who are the teams that we're missing? But Houston was the one team that just continued to be in the top 3, top 4, top 5 at worst in the Big 12 through all these different simulations. So you'd have some shockers like UCF finishing in the top 4. But Houston was the one that just, with their roster and Willie Fritz's track record, the consistency was there. And so what does that look like? Is that 8-4? Or is that 10-2 or 11-1? The thing for me is they've got to win some really tough road games, but they have the talent now to do it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I still wouldn't put them in that Texas Tech BYU upper tier, but I mean, this obviously improves their roster, and if they have these guys up to speed and ready to go by week 3 when they play Tech, you know, that game, especially with the dynamic of Stephon Johnson and Amari Thomas on the outside and the differences you outlined, could be a huge difference maker in that. Speaking of Texas Tech, here's something that Joey McGuire said yesterday.
I said the whole time that I would have done different. If I would have known that the NFL and really the commissioner, I say the NFL, we spoke to 50-plus NFL personnel the days before the commissioner said that they were not going to allow Brennan Sorsby to be a part of the supplemental draft. If I would have known that from the beginning, I love Brennan. And, you know, he's been out here. He was at a practice the other day. I would have said, hey, let's just don't take this chance, man. I don't want that for you. It's amazing where across all levels of football and really athletics that there are going to be people playing this year. They're going to be suspended for X amount of games. And Brennan Sorsby is going to have to sit out and wait till 2027 to play at any level. And if I would have known that, I would have said, let's pivot and let's do something else. Because, man, I hate that for him. I think it's going to be good for him in his recovery. He looks great. He's working his tail off. He's dealing with his issues. He has an issue. He's an addict. And for some reason, that addiction, I guess, is okay in the eyes of everybody else. That maybe that gambling's not an addiction. It is. I think, you know, I could be totally wrong, and I hate to be wrong whenever I talk about stuff like this, but I think this has the highest suicide rate of any addiction. And so I hate it for him that he's having to sit out, but I know he's going to use this to his advantage to become a better person.
So when he says, if we had known that he wouldn't have been eligible for the supplemental draft, we would have pivoted and did something different. What does that mean? What does that entail? Is he implying that Texas Tech would have continued to fight this for him to play this season for the Red Raiders? Were they really willing to go down that road? I get everything he's saying about Brendan Sorsby as a person, but his story is not over. And as Joey alluded to, he is an addict who is still going through recovery. He's in a really good place, but it's still going to be a long road ahead. So I think that the punishment to a certain degree fits the crime, especially when he's going to be eligible for 2027. And he's still only going to be, 23, 24? I don't know exactly how old he is now, but he's going to be a young quarterback that I think could still work his way into the NFL. It just won't be right away.
Yeah, McGuire made these comments Yahoo Sports, as he was a guest on Yahoo Sports Daily, when asked about kind of the, NFL players now going back to the college ranks, if they're not able to make a team. And so, this was in response to that, basically saying, and he's staying at home while this is all happening. I get it. It also feels like we just need to not talk about Brennan Sorsby anymore, if you're Joey McGuire.
Agree with that. And I also get from their perspective, it has to be frustrating to see guys get eligible left and right that have been in the NFL, especially after everything Texas Tech went through. But all of that is in the past, and I'm with you on it's time to move forward.
And it doesn't matter that you think that there's a distinction between those things. I think what we found out is that, once gambling is involved here in sports, there's no correlation there. There's no connective tissue. Those are totally different things. and it makes you sound worse when you try to draw that connection. People have a distinction when it comes to gambling in sports that is just different than literally anything else.
And you're not going to change people's minds.
No.
The court of public opinion has ruled. The verdict is in. And so continuing to try and change people's mind, I think at this point, you just omit that topic entirely. And Texas Tech has a chance to take advantage of this eligibility rule if they bring in Tommy Castellanos.
Yeah. All right, Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We've got a lot to get to today, including our final countdown to kickoff as we're taking a look at BYU. Plus, we go around Big 12 camps. In fact, we've talked a lot about TCU, North Carolina, but Colorado and Georgia Tech kick things off a week from Thursday, so they're in game week mode as well. All of that coming up. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on, tuned in, and watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here on your home for the Big 12. Tune in. If you have not yet already, download the TuneIn app and search Big 12. That way you can find us each and every morning from 7 to 10 a.m. And, of course, it's not just the morning show, but constant content throughout TuneIn on Big 12 Radio. So check it out with all Big 12 all the time. And, of course, on Big 12 Studios to stream us live each and every morning from 7 to 10 a.m. Central. Just go to big12studios.com, and you can find all the places you can find us, including YouTube, Amazon Prime Video, Roku, DirecTV, lots of other platforms as well. So really, really cool stuff there. All right, so news around Houston with the additions of both Stephon Johnson at wide receiver and Miles Rouser at safety. And how about the Big 12's highest paid players, James? So On3 Sports has released sort of the highest paid players per conference. It's based on their own internal metrics on how they evaluate a player's NIL value. What does it tell you about the Big 12, and what does it tell you about college football spending?
Well, when you look at this list, there are 13 individuals that are identified. It's the one name that you think, who? George Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, that's one of them for sure.
Offensive lineman, Kansas State. 1.2 mil, the highly touted transfer from Ohio State prior to last season. And you don't know that name because he has never played a snap of Big 12 football. But outside of that, it tells me that the Big 12 is pretty in line with one another and connected when it comes to the market and the quarterback position. Drew Mestemaker at $3.5 million checks in at number one. That is not a surprise to me. He was the nation's leading passer last season, and Oklahoma State had to have a tremendous investment into their football program to bring in Eric Morris and to bring in the talent needed to compete. But then after that, you've got Bear Bachmeier, Avery Johnson, Noah Fafita, DJ Lagway, Devin Dampier, all making the exact same amount, according to these projections, with Jaden Craig and Cutter Boley just behind the pack and really close. So to me, it tells me that, number one, there's not a lot of separation at that position. And then number two, just that the Big 12 and the way they spend money, I think it's pretty aligned across the board. Everybody has, for the most part, there are some outliers, but for the most part, these schools have a similar budget and they're spending a similar amount of money.
Yeah, and it's important to know, too, what exactly On3 is measuring here. So On3 used to have an algorithm-based model where they sort of decided, based on the algorithm, what the value of the player was. But now they're actually reporting and looking at specific numbers to try to make it a little bit more accurate. It's not a projection. It's basically designed to track athletes' compensation from colleges and collectives. So it even says down below that it's a little bit different in this graphic than it used to be. So it's probably closer to more accurate than it was, but not 100% accuracy. I think, like, there's not much of a surprise here with Mestemaker at $3.5 million. It does seem very low, and you know, if Sorsby were still playing this year, his number would be significantly higher, probably twice as much as Drew Mestemaker, which I think says a lot about where the Big 12 is. You know, Texas Tech has a couple of guys in this list, Howard Sampson at 2, A.J. Holmes at 1.5, but they're clearly outspending the majority of the Big 12, and I think these numbers reflect that. Whereas, you know, Texas Tech could expand the budget a bit from a quote-unquote true NIL perspective, but most of the programs in the Big 12 are spending, you know, on individual players somewhere between $1 and $2 million per player and at the top level.
The quarterback position in the Big 12, to me, is the best value compared to any other league. The player that you have at that position for the dollar that is their price tag, especially when you look elsewhere and you see Sam Leavitt and Josh Hoover making just insane money. Where would those guys rank in the Big 12 coming into this season? Sure, they'd be towards the top, but they wouldn't be like in stone, this is the top quarterback in the Big 12. Sam Leavitt's coming off a gnarly injury. Josh Hoover had interception issues. And those guys are shattering the financial numbers. So value for what you're getting at the position stands out. when you're talking about 1.5 to 2 to 3.5 with Mestamaker. The Big 12, 6 starting quarterbacks return. They have accounted for the Big 12 collectively at that position. The most total touchdowns, the most rushing yards, the most passing yards collectively among all conferences.
Wow.
This is the most experienced quarterback room in the nation when you look at the Big 12. And 4 of the 7 most winningest quarterbacks in the entire country are on Big 12 rosters. 4 of the 7, more than half. So the experience that you're getting at that position, to me, it's a huge deal. Like, literally, it is a deal. Deal or no deal, it is a deal, the value that these schools are getting at that position.
Yeah. It's surprising to me that K-State has 3 guys on this list. It's a top 13 list. It's also surprising, or maybe it shouldn't be, who's not on this list. Do you notice who's not on this list?
All right, let me think. Who am I missing? Is it a skill position player?
Not players, sorry. Teams.
Teams.
Programs.
Well, I don't see Houston.
Houston's not on this list. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 Big 12 schools not in the top 13 with an individual player. You got Houston.
Mm-hmm. West Virginia.
Yep.
UCF.
Yep.
Arizona's on the list. Arizona State's on the list. Baylor's on the list. Kansas is not. Cincinnati is not. Iowa State is not. How many is that?
One more.
One more. Colorado.
Colorado is also not on this list.
That is a surprise.
Yes. I'm not surprised by Kansas, Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, Iowa State, or West Virginia. I'm sort of surprised, I think, about West Virginia and Houston, but shocked about Colorado.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the narrative. That's the perception. Deion's making a ridiculous amount of money. Deion spends a ridiculous amount of money. Julian Lewis, who was a 5-star prospect, is not in the top 13. To your point, I would have thought he was in the same range as Jaden Craig or Cutter Boley, the quarterbacks at TCU and Arizona State, who are both transfers. Kansas State having 3 in the top 13 is shocking to me. It also Wendell Gregory's number 2, the edge rusher, who was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year last year at Oklahoma State, transfers to K-State. I can see why he signed with the Wildcats so quickly. So, did they overpay for this edge rusher? When you look at all the guys that Texas Tech has on their defensive line that aren't in the top 13, time will tell.
Well, and here's the other part. So the on-3 projection for estimated roster cost has Houston 2nd and Colorado 3rd. So Texas Tech is projected to be spending $33.3 million on their roster. My guess is that number is probably low. Houston is 24.5. So that's pretty surprising. The drop-off between 1 and 2 is basically $10 million. And then Colorado's at $23.2 million without anybody on the board. K-State has 3 players, the most player on this board, but they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th on this list at $21.7 million.
Houston is number 2?
Houston is number 2 in estimated roster cost via On3 Sports.
That is stunning to me because the perception, the narrative is that Houston doesn't have any money.
Well, and that's, I guess, true to a point, right? They're not paying anybody top dollar to be in the top 13, which means what? What's number 13 at? Caleb Hawkins is making $1 million?
Yeah, right at $1 million.
So that means that they have the players that are either at $1 million or under.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's over $1 million.
That tells me that they are spending money seeking depth over top-end talent. And I think they've accumulated both. And then the other thing with those numbers, is that a projection based off of the type of player that you're getting? Shadray Hurst is the top-rated player in that EA Sports video game. He's like a 93 overall or something crazy. He's not making $1 million according to this graphic. Is he making $700,000 or $800,000? Is his evaluation that On3 is using as part of their projections $2 to $3 million, which he probably would have received at another program? Like that's what I like. Nobody has that data. What's a player's estimate or value versus what they were actually getting? Because maybe they took a couple $100,000 less to reunite with Coach Fritz, or to be in the Texas Tech locker room. Like, there are other factors that play into it.
I'd also imagine like a Keyshawn Henderson has a deal that is going to increase over time, and he'll be well over $1 million in the next few seasons, I can imagine. 8 of the 13 on that list are quarterbacks. 10 of the 13 play offense. 2 defenders total on that list. Wendell Gregory and A.J. Holmes are the only 2 guys on the defensive side of the football that are cracking that top 13 list. It's all offensive players, which is interesting. I would think it should all be quarterbacks, left tackles, or pass rushers. That's what I would think.
Yeah, and there's only 2 offensive linemen, and only one of them have played in the Big 12. Howard Sampson. Like, George Fitzpatrick is the second highest paid offensive lineman in the league, and he has never been on the field for a single snap.
Well, and Sampson's good, but if he were good enough, he would be in the NFL right now. So I'm not even sure where Sampson would rank if we rank the top 5, top 10 offensive linemen in the Big 12 right now.
Which we did this offseason, and I think he cracked the top 5, but I don't believe he was in either of our top 3. And with him, it's the penalties, right? It's the pre-snap penalties. And I think that's the thing that NFL scouts are falling in love with, and what Texas Tech sees is when he's not getting penalized, he's a dominant left tackle. I mean, pancakes, sacks allowed, rushing Pro Football Focus grade, pass blocking grade. He's elite in all of the categories. It's just the mental aspect of the game.
Yeah, and again, sort of reiterating, the Big 12 is at a different level than the other conferences. If Drew Mestemaker is making the most in the conference at 3.5, which I don't disagree with, that's probably the case. Jordan Seaton's reportedly making a deal north of $4 million to play left tackle for LSU. That shows a lot about the discrepancy between other conferences in the Big 12.
Double the amount.
Yeah, I mean, if a left tackle in the SEC is making $4 million, that's number 1 in the Big 12. Like, what are quarterbacks making? What are high-level receivers, or like, what did Texas pay Cam Coleman? Right? I mean, like, clearly they outpaid what Texas Tech could or wanted to. That number's got to be north of 4, I would imagine.
Yeah. What do you think Arch Manning is making? What do you think Sam Levitt is making? What do you think Keelan Russell is making?
Sam's making Brendan Sorsby type money.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what's the value for Sam Levitt? A guy that missed over 3/4 of last season because of injury issues, versus the value that you're getting for Avery Johnson at less than half that amount, or Jaden Craig for less than 70% of that amount. Like, that's why I think the Big 12, in terms of the value that you're getting at that position, it's more than anybody else in America.
Yeah. Well, and it's no surprise that Texas Tech, with the billionaires that they've been able to put together, should be at the top of that list. Is there anybody else that should be higher on that list in terms of total spending, or with players that's spending?
Like with teams?
Yeah. Like, should Kansas be higher on that list?
I was actually surprised that Texas Tech didn't have more players in the top 13.
Yeah, agreed.
And then BYU
they
only
didn't have to spend as
one.
much on pass rushers this year.
Right. And they kind of spread the wealth when it came to that defensive line and the way they spend. If they have a $7 million defensive line like they had last year, they brought in like 10 dudes for $7 million. That's less than $1 million a player. Like, I think that was the approach this year for a lot of these schools, is the Big 12 was seeking depth. When those injuries and that wear and tear starts to add up throughout the course of a season, you need that next man up.
Well, in big picture, right, a big part of this is how you're supposed to build a championship caliber team, and where are you allocating your funds and your resources. And I think at this point it's a lot of guess and check. I don't know that Indiana's roster from a spend standpoint is where it is this year. It's probably closer last year to a Big 12 number than it is to a Big 10 number, and I'm sure that number has dramatically increased as they've won a national championship. But I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be very interesting to see what wins and what doesn't in terms of how you allocate your resources in football, and see how coaches respond to that. It's really interesting to look at this stuff. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. On the way next, let's talk a little Big 12 soccer with Kendra Sheehan, who is a Big 12 Olympic sports digital contributor. She joins us next to break down what we've seen so far in soccer on the Big 12 side, plus Valid or Void coming up. It's Big 12 today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Here comes the TCU pressure. Deal picked off. That will do it. a tackle if I've ever seen one. Boom! Good Lord.
Side of Lopez. And no running room.
This defense, you keep contained, not fooled at all.
Finish at the end of the year where no one feels like you have to play for.
What do you have inside of you? Is Pryor on the run, can't get outside. Izor spun him down.
If he can correct on a 3rd and 11. He steps up in some trouble and he's swung down. Izor with the sack.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here on your home for the Big 12. Football season is starting for the Big 12 on Saturday with TCU and North Carolina in Week 0. Colorado and Georgia Tech kick things off for the Big 12 Week 1 on Thursday night. Volleyball has started. Soccer has started. Let's talk about soccer now with Kendra Sheehan, covers Big 12 Olympic sports as a digital contributor. Kendra, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys? Bright and early. I was listening to the show earlier. You guys are killing it, and it's great to join the show today.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. All right, let's start with soccer. Soccer's already started. There's been some upsets for the Big 12 already to celebrate? Give us kind of a lay of the land so far.
This is set up to be another extremely exciting year for Big 12 soccer. I mean, you look at last year, what the Big 12 was able to do in terms of teams getting into the NCAA tournament. Parity was the biggest thing from last year that I looked at. I mean, the number 8 seed in the conference tournament, BYU, ends up winning the whole thing. TCU, of course, is the queen of the conference. They're the team that everyone is trying to knock off. But 8 teams from the Big 12 made the NCAA tournament. That tied the Big 12 conference record for most teams selected since 2003. So a lot of star power is also coming back on these teams, which is really exciting. You have a lot of longtime head coaches in the league, a couple newcomers that are bringing a lot of new looks and dynamics to their offense, which is exciting. But I mean, 4 teams made the NCAA tournament round of 16 last year. So it's really exciting when you look at this year, those star players that are choosing to come back and return. It's set up to be another fantastic year.
Well, and kind of like Big 12 football, the last 2 years, outside of what Texas Tech did last season, like there's been a lot of competitive balance. An 8 seed, BYU won the conference tournament last year. Kansas as a 6 seed won it the year before. It kind of, to me, in my mind, is a parallel between like what happened in the Big 12 in football in 2024 with Arizona State, a team that was 3-9 the year before. They win the Big 12 championship. So how big of a surprise was that you have a 6 or an 8 seed, or is the Big 12 with that competitive balance that's almost kind of par for the course?
You know, I almost think it is par for the course when you look at the last 2 years, just because it's so competitive. And when you reach the tournament, you know, anything can happen. And these teams are set up with so many players that they can make a run. Their teams are deep with rosters filled with talent where the starters come off. That next level that comes on the field, the talent doesn't dip off. And so I think it's really exciting when you have an 8 seed and then the year before a 6 seed win, because that means that teams can go into this tournament and know, hey, we have a chance at the NCAA tournament. And if we don't, we're looking at large bids, 8 teams getting into the tournament. That's a big deal for the conference. And the early looks for the start of this season are already showing that there are a ton of teams that can contend for that number 1 spot.
There's some really big matches this week. Baylor, Texas on Thursday. 15th ranked TCU plays 25th ranked Georgia on Thursday as well. And then 17th ranked Colorado with Hope Leba plays number 5 Michigan State on Sunday. So some really good matchups. Oh, and then Houston as well at number 4 Vanderbilt on Sunday too. So some really good matchups this week.
I love all the matchups early on. I'll plug the Houston one because I'll be on the call in Houston for that game. I called the game against Tarleton State, so I'm familiar with the Cougars, and they're off to a great start. And they're a team, I mean, they're picked in the lower part of the bracket, or the preseason poll rather, but they're a team that has a ton of star power as well. Ben Williams is in year 2. Some of these matchups are really intriguing. I mean, specifically, I'm looking at the Colorado-Michigan State game. You know, the Buffs are off to a 3-0 start, but all of those matches were played at home. So they head on the road this week. They'll take on 2 teams on the road, ending with Michigan State, number 5 Michigan State. So if they can come in and get a win on their home field, I think that sets the tone for Colorado coming up there and contending with TCU. I mean, TCU has been that team to beat. The Colorado Buffs are right there.
Kendra, what's the story with BYU? Because we know about their huge upset over a top 10 team when they beat UCLA. But I see like BYU was an 8 seed in this conference tournament last year, and now they're ranked in the top 10.
BYU is another intriguing team, and I think it just goes back to who's at the helm of the program, Jennifer Rockwood. I mean, she's the first and only head coach of BYU's women's soccer team, 32nd season. She started coaching in 1995. That's the year I was born. She has the most wins among active female head coaches. She's qualified for the NCAA tournament in 26 of her 31 seasons. And they got a lot of players coming back. Ellie Walbrook scored 16 goals in 2025, 91 shots. That actually led the conference tournament in goals during that time. And so they bring a lot of key players back this year. And then when you're looking at a coach who has so much experience and really all she does is win, you know, no matter what pieces she has on that roster, she's going to find a way to get this team to contend for a title spot.
Who are some of the sleepers in the Big 12?
Some of the sleepers, okay, I'm going all the way down in the preseason poll, and I'm looking at Kansas State. Now, this is just an early prediction. Things are obviously going to change, but this just speaks against the depth of the Big 12. Because, I mean, I can see them finishing, mid-upper pack. Will they contend for a title? Probably not. They have a second-year head coach in Colleen Corbin, and you look at her first year at the helm, 7-6-5. It was the first winning season in Kansas State's program history. They did start the year 4-0. You're looking at wins over, Seattle U, Hawaii, Missouri State, South Dakota State. They'll have a huge test coming up. They're going to take on Nebraska and Iowa, and I think that'll be a good benchmark to see where this program is at. But they have 12 goals on the year, so the offense is starting to go. And then when you return Maddie Sibbing in net, who already has a school record, 11th career shutout so far, anything can happen. And so they're a team that, hey, don't look past Kansas State. They're going to be someone who's going to come in, and you got to step up to the challenge because they're not going to be a team that's just going to roll over.
And they have an awesome women's soccer stadium that's only used for that purpose and is relatively new, and the program is still somewhat new. You mentioned their coach, Colleen Corbin. What can you tell us about their head coach? I know Mike Dabini was there and kind of birthed the program, so what's her story?
Yeah, she comes in with, a lot of experience. And one of the things that I love about her is she's a high energy player, and she's one that wants to, or high energy coach, who wants to get the most out of her players. She's going to be the one who's going to push the pace on offense, and she's not going to be afraid to do different things. She's very creative in that aspect, and I love that, especially when you look at this league. You have a lot of longtime head coaches, a couple of coaches who have been there for 20-plus years, some who have started the program. West Virginia, their coach has been there all 30 years of their program's history. And so you have someone like Colleen Corbin who comes in, she's a fresh face, and she just brings a different level of creativity that you haven't seen. Defense, it's non-negotiables. There's a way that they're going to defend, and we've seen that, especially with the number of shutouts that team has put together over the course of just the 2 years that she's been there. But I like the edge. I like that new idea that she brings to soccer, and I think that's what's having them, or allowing them rather, to have so much success this year. They're very challenging to play against. They switch things up in the midfield. They switch up their formations. And whenever you have that, all you're trying to do is make a team uncomfortable. And Kansas State is very good at doing that.
Great stuff. Can't wait to keep catching up with you throughout the season to get updated on what's going on in women's soccer across the Big 12. Kendra Sheehan from Big 12 Olympic Sport digital contributor. Thank you so much, Kendra. And where can people find your content from a digital contribution standpoint?
Absolutely. I'll be creating content for the Big 12, so you can follow their socials. And then, of course, my own socials, Kendra Sheehan _ or Kendra _ Sheehan on Instagram. You can follow me on TikTok as well, and I'll be posting stuff on my Facebook page as well. So all throughout the season, there should be good content coming up. I'm excited.
Awesome. So are we. Great stuff. Kendra Sheehan, Big 12 Olympic Sports digital contributor, joining us here on Big 12 Radio with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on Tuned In and Watched on Big 12 Studios. On the way next, a little Valid or Void. We do a deep dive into TCU football as they start the season on Saturday in Dublin. Plus, Thomas Castellanos. Will he start for Texas Tech at some point this season? It's all coming up on Valid or Void with James Amari. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on Tuned In and Watched on Big 12 Studios.
Out to the edge and going nowhere. Logan Fano shows up again, this time in the run game to make it a 3rd down and long.
Toss. Ishaw can't get past Fano. It's going to bring up 3rd down.
5-man front. Caden Salter be ready for pressure. Again, here it comes, and there it goes. Another sack. Fano, Leia in a race to the quarterback, sandwich Salter down. Not getting a lot of shots at offensive line. Pressure comes, picked up at least for a moment. Now Sims trying to get to the corner, and he sort of did.
I always
State back in Boulder 2 weeks ago. Salter pressure, gets rid of it, and heaves it out of bounds. His running back Micah Welch was in the area, but it's pick your poison up front. Logan Fano applies it against.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us on social at James Westling. You can always get me on social at Ari Sports. And, of course, we invite you to jump into our Big 12 Today chat. As part of watching Big 12 Today on YouTube, just go to Big 12 Conference YouTube channel. Start watching and commenting, and we may even read some of your comments on air. And shout out to all of our friends that join us each and every day there in the chat, whether it's Bracket Cat or Wet Blanket or James Faust or many others that join us each and every day on our YouTube channel at Big 12, the Big 12 Conference. All right, time for a little Valid or Void, shall we? This is where we bring Taman into the mix, our producer, T-Chains.
What up,
That was
guys?
our topic. We decide if it's valid or void.
What up, guys? All right, let's do this thing. All right, so very TCU-oriented. They're playing their Week 0 game in Dublin against North Carolina. So my first topic is involving Jaden Craig. So last year, Jaden Craig threw for 2,869 yards while at Harvard. Obviously not at Harvard anymore, in the Big 12 at TCU. So, valid or void, Jaden Craig will throw for over 3,000 yards this season.
Well, Wet Blanket just spit out his coffee, because this is clearly valid. Jaden Craig will blow the doors off a 3,000 passing yard season. There's this perception that Gordon Samus doesn't throw the football. Well, his quarterback, who is a transfer from Maine and an okay quarterback at the FCS level, torched defenses at UConn. And a lot of that was Gordon Samus's system. He had nearly 4,000 yards passing. So why stop at 3? Jaden Craig, who's an NFL prospect, will easily hit 3,000 yards. That's like 250 a game over a 12-game schedule. He crushes that number. I think he's closer to 3,500 yards when the season is all said and done.
James. I'd love to agree with you here. I would.
No, you can if you want.
But he didn't even throw for 3,000 yards in the Ivy League, James. This ain't the Ivy League, James. He's going to play tough defenses. They're going to force throws out of him, and we'll see if he can do it. He even admitted during Big 12 Media Days, quote, I want to prove the talent translates and transcends levels. He's got to prove it. We'll see if he does it. Would love to see him throw for 3,000. Would love to see him throw for 4,000. But I'll say void. There's going to be a concerted effort to run the football, and we'll see how effective they are at throwing the football.
I mean, spring games don't lie, guys. Okay? He had 390 yards in the TCU spring game. But he didn't. He didn't throw an interception. Never mind. He had 3 touchdowns. Clean sheet.
390, 3 touchdowns.
By the way,
pretty much what he did against Dartmouth last year, which last I checked, Dartmouth isn't in the Big 12.
Princeton brings a lot of pressure. He would only need to average 230 yards a game if he played in a bowl game. If they played in 13 games, the number's 230. Just saying.
All right, I'm just going to say this. I'm voiding this too. TCU is going to run the ball a lot. I feel that strongly. All right, next topic still involving TCU. So the average winner of the Aer Lingus Classic averages 28.2 points per game. So valid or void, TCU will score more than 28 points on Saturday against North Carolina.
How about that? Taman took his vitamins this morning.
I'm going to say I'm going to validate this. I think even though I have faith and confidence in North Carolina's offense is better and more talented, this is the first game for them with a lot of true freshmen, tons of talent there, playing overseas with a collection of defensive coordinators, if you will. Plus, pretty incredible. TCU has scored at least 28 points in 30 straight non-conference regular season games, the second longest streak by an FBS program in the last 45 seasons. 60 new players. Bill Belichick's defense, how complicated can it be? I'll validate this. I think they get to 28 easily.
Yeah, I think I'm going to validate this as well. I was leaning void, and you guys convinced me. Over 60 new players, a North Carolina defense that was really susceptible to just about everything last year. And then the reason why I lean valid is, number one, 28 points to your point. That's not much in today's era of college football. The Iowa State-Kansas State game last year was about as gross as it gets, and somebody got to 28 points. TCU outscored North Carolina 48-7 last year. Remember, North Carolina scored first. They went on an 82-yard scoring drive. We thought, TCU could be in trouble. And then they tightened the screws. After that, they held North Carolina to just 50 rushing yards on 28 carries. My point is, TCU, because of their defense, shutting down the Tar Heels, I think is going to get extra possessions. And we know they won't be turning the ball over. They also got their kicker back. He got hurt last year in the North Carolina game. Their special teams look much better this year. So give me those field goals. Give me those red zone scoring opportunities. Yeah, I'll say TCU scores more than 28.
I'm for it. I agree with Mr. Westland. All good. All right. Next TCU topic. I said they're going to run the football out this year. Pound that rock under new offensive coordinator Gordon Samus. So valid or void, Jeremy Payne will rush for over 1,000 yards and will have at least 10 rushing touchdowns this season. For the record, last year he had 623 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns on the season. Valid or void?
Just me? Valid. He will easily hit 1,000 yards. Did you see what he did last year in the bowl game? He was the overtime hero. He took that 3rd and 20 little dump off from Ken Seals, the 35-yard walk-off touchdown. But in his last 4 games, he had over 600 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. He had 6 explosive runs of 15 or more yards, a team high, and he did all of that in the last 4 games. Why wasn't he more involved in the offense weeks 1 through 10 last season? He's their primary back. Gordon Samus at UConn has had a 1,000-yard rusher every single season that he's been there. The 10 touchdowns is the part that intrigues me. I could see him maybe struggling to get to that number, but just because of the workload and his talent, I'm validating this. 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns this year for Jeremy Payne.
Yeah, I'm validating 1,000 yards, and I think, yes, last season he came on strong at the end of the year. I don't think that matters at all in this conversation because this is such a dramatically different offense. But I also don't need that as a reason for why last season he's going to rush for 1,000 yards this year. You said it. Gordon Samus has a 1,000-yard back every year he's been an offensive coordinator. And I think this offense is built around Jeremy Payne. I think even at the quarterback position, they're going to be running the football with Jaden Craig to the point where Payne will play off of that. So again, 10 touchdowns, I might have to void this totally because I just don't know that I believe he'll get 10 touchdowns, but 1,000 yards easily. So I guess I'm sort of halfway in between here. 100% 1,000 yards. 10 touchdowns though, maybe.
It's the part that had to be voided.
Yeah. What did hang on. UConn's running back last year, he rushed for, there's their passing, where's their rushing? He had 15 touchdowns. Cameron Edwards, who's now at a power conference school, he had 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. He had 210 carries. The next closest running back had 30. They find their guy and they lean on their guy within the Gordon Samus offense.
Yeah.
Pound that rock.
Yeah.
I'm going for it. I'd say give him 10 touchdowns. I'm going for it. All right, next one. We're getting away from TCU. You guys have kind of mentioned this a little bit. You mentioned it a little bit today. You mentioned it a lot yesterday. But Tommy Castellanos, he looks like he's going to Texas Tech. He looks like he's already there. So valid or void, Tommy Castellanos will start for Texas Tech at some point this season.
I'm going to void this. Thomas Castellanos will not start a game for Tech this season. Will Hammond will start every game for Tech this year.
What about Will Howard?
What did I say?
You said Hammond.
You can't do this to me. You cannot do this to me. I'm too sensitive. That one hits too close to home.
That's sensitive.
Your face when he said it literally was like, did I say that?
Which one did I say?
Trying to stop you dead in your tracks. Slam on those brakes.
Yeah, look, Will Hammond is going to make everybody forget about Brennan Sorsby by mid-October. And I think we'll see Thomas Castellanos, but he's not going to start a game this year. No. Will Hammond is going to start every game. He's going to be healthy, and he's going to be explosive. We're going to see a lot of Thomas Castellanos, though. We are going to see a lot of him. Just he won't be starting.
Yeah, Taman, I don't have a crystal ball. There's not a magic 8-ball sitting on this ottoman. I can't see into the 4th dimension. It's all connected. You're asking us to predict if Will Hammond is going to be healthy all year. Because if he's healthy, he is their number 1 guy. This is an insurance policy. That's how it's being framed to Will Hammond, and that's the right move. Because he has shown when he is healthy, he is a very capable quarterback. With that said, more than 8 teams in the Big 12, more than half the league a season ago, played their backup quarterback, and almost half of those teams had to actually start a backup quarterback in one game or another. So it's a total coin flip on if he plays. The only reason he would play is that Will Hammond gets beat up, gets hurt, and has to miss some time.
Don't you mean Will Hammond?
I think I mean Will Hammond.
You said Will Hammond. I was just trying to screw you up.
I know you did. I know you did. This guy.
We have to have a button.
How Will Howard was so good.
Can we have a button that we press for
dynamic?
Anytime somebody says Will Hammond or Will
Ohio
Howard?
State doesn't win that championship if Will Howard's not on that team.
I agree with you guys, by the way. I believe this is Will Hammond's team. I think Joey McGuire has been very clear on that, and he has expressed his belief in his quarterback.
I know the telepathy tapes are very popular, Taman, but can you read minds?
Sometimes.
I'm already thinking right now.
Sometimes I can. Okay. I said sometimes, not all.
This is all just totally injury related, which we don't know.
You know what I'm thinking? Do you know that Will Howard's brother's on K-State right now?
Yeah, Ryan.
Just didn't know if you knew that.
Offensive lineman, high ceiling.
Ryan Howard.
Where's Ryan Hammond, though?
That's the question.
That's the $1 million question. All right, but we are going to talk about Kansas State because James was just thinking about it so much yesterday. So we have to ask, valid or void, Kansas State will not make the Big 12 championship game due to the injuries of John Pastore and George Fitzpatrick.
Go ahead and validate this, James.
James, you love K-State. Please give us a reason.
You guys remember 2003? L. Roberson was a dude.
Yeah. Of course I remember 2003, like the back of my hand.
35-7, Big 12 championship win over Oklahoma. Oklahoma was being touted as like the greatest team ever in college football. Kansas State blew the doors off of them at Arrowhead Stadium. Yeah, K-State misses the Big 12 championship. I'm really worried about the offensive line. You brought in a bunch of transfers because there just weren't a lot of leftovers up front. And one of your highest paid players on the roster has not played a snap, and it sounds like will not play a snap this season in George Fitzpatrick. And then you lose your preseason All-Big 12 guy who was second team last year for the year. Like, these are the type of injuries that start to add up. This team's not going to get healthier as the season progresses. Now, I think they can still win 8 games or maybe 9, but in terms of being a true title contender, right now I say no.
George Fitzpatrick, man, Fitz magic. He is a true magic man. Now you see him.
Now you don't. Except you never saw him. That's the thing.
Well, you saw him when Chris Kleiman said he's the best lineman they've had. Now you see him. Now you don't.
Now You See Me 3 is going to be electric. It was a great movie, but God, the sequel was awful.
Beyond. I'm going to avoid this. K-State is not going to make the Big 12 championship game, but it have nothing to do with John Pastore or George Fitzpatrick. James. What? Ye of little faith. Why am I the person to talk you off the ledge on Kansas State football?
Let's see.
Far be it from me to be a K-State football homer here, but if there's one positional group you should feel good about, just based on blind faith, it is the offensive line. K-State doesn't have bad offensive lines, James. They just don't. Bad receiving cores, yes. They've had bad positional groups in other places.
They haven't had a receiver since Tyler Lockett.
I mean, it's been a while, okay? Like, receivers the one to be worried about, and it has nothing to do with anything other than the historical context here. K-State just churns out quality offensive linemen. One of them is about to start at center for the Dallas Cowboys. Yet another one starting at center for years in Cody Whitehair. Like, they've got dudes, man, and they will. They're like Iowa. You just churn out these Kansas farm boys that, grow up on farms, doing all farm stuff.
Well, Tyler Johnson is the opposite of that. He's a transfer from Auburn. He grew up in the Deep South. Oh, and at left tackle, he's now the projected starter. You know who the backup is? They don't have one. It's an invisible line on their depth chart. There is no backup left tackle.
You're the backup left tackle.
Yes.
Congratulations.
You know who the backup right tackle is? George Fitzpatrick. They don't have any tackles.
Why isn't he the backup left tackle?
They don't have any tackles.
George Fitzpatrick should be the backup left and right tackle. I don't know why he'd be the backup right. Maybe our lads doesn't know anything.
Evan Bacon, Invisible Man, is the backup left tackle.
Big 12
a problem.
Big 12 today, Big 12 radio. It's a little valid or void. On the way next, we go around Big 12 camps, including the Colorado Buffs already in game week. What does success look like at Iowa State? And Arizona's secondary, full of Nebraska Cornhuskers. We'll explain next. It's Big 12 today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Blitz coming, jailbreak, and they run the perfect play. It's small. He's big. He's down. inside the 5 to the 1. BJ Payne tripped him up to save the touchdown. What an effort here.
And there it is. They fake the handoff and to the backside. And another tackle for loss at the 20, this time by BJ Payne. They tried to get the man on the edge on the far side, and BJ was having none of it.
It's always about how you finish. Kobe Williams hit by Payne. Second down. And he'll make you pay. Handoff. Parker gets stuffed, stays on his feet, and now is going to go down.
12th play of the drive. Hands off to Hishaw. Steps to an ankle tackle and rumbles below the 30. BJ Payne finally got him to the turf.
Kansas State going to try and put some pressure on it. Floor steps up, floats one toward the end zone. Does not have a receiver there. And that's an interception to end the half. BJ Payne with his first interception of the year.
4th downs this year. A big one in this second half. Brown stopped originally, and the ball comes out. Is the play dead, though? The whistles came after the ball came out.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. That is James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us on your home for the Big 12. TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. Let's go around Big 12 camps, shall we? Check in on what's going on across the Big 12 at various Big 12 camps. We'll start with our friend Justin Spears, who does a great job in covering Arizona football for the Tucson Star. Arizona's cornerback competition heating up in training camp. And for me, a huge part of the story is that there's two Huskers that are factoring into a Arizona secondary. Can they uphold the standard? That's the question mark we've been asking the entire offseason. Arizona's strength was on the defensive side of the ball and their secondary. It was a huge strength for the overall output of the team to win 9 games. And so they've thrown money and numbers at the issue, and we'll see if it fixes it. But Malcolm Hartzog's a guy that is definitely going to be a major contributor. He was a big-time factor for Nebraska last year. In fact, picked off Brendan Sorsby in the season opener against Cincinnati to win that game. And then the other name to know is Dwight Boodle. Boodle transfers from Charlotte, but he spent 2 years before that at Nebraska. And he's been a very effective corner. Dwight's brother, DiCaprio Boodle, also played corner at Nebraska, now is in the NFL. So some Huskers are going to be factoring in a major way to this secondary at Arizona.
And Malcolm Hartzog was a monster in that Nebraska-Cincinnati game. Remember watching that game, and yes, he had the game-clinching interception, but he was just all over the field. He has an NFL-ready body. So that's where I start. And then Boodle, you mentioned that he was at Charlotte. Charlotte was notorious under Biff Poggi for finding guys in the portal that were really highly touted high school players that didn't get on the field at their first stop. And they have had guys that, despite their record at Charlotte, you don't really think of the Charlotte 49ers as a football power, but they've had dudes that are in the NFL now because they get these guys that were super highly rated out of high school. They just had locker room issues. The thing, speaking of locker room, with Arizona, their hidden weapon to me is their safeties/secondary coach, Brett Arce, who's been on our show. He was a holdover from the previous staff. He was the one guy that Brent Brennan brought back. He was kind of a graduate assistant role, doing some stuff on special teams and kind of like that third guy with the secondary. I believe he's the reason why Arizona has had so much success putting guys in the NFL. I'm not concerned about Arizona's secondary. I think they have depth. They have talent. Javion Cole is locked in to be a starting corner. And then they've got a Howard transfer, a Wyoming transfer. Everybody has transfers in their secondary. So the guy that I think can make it all click and come together is their coach. And sure, they may not be as dynamic as they were a season ago. When you put 4 guys in the NFL, that's tough to replicate. But I still think they're a top half of this league secondary.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And you know, Dwayne Aquina is a guy that has spent time at Arizona and Tucson. He's churned out a ton of NFL talent both at Arizona and at Texas. So he's a huge factor. In fact, Cedric Griffin, who's an all-pro NFL corner for years, played at Texas for Dwayne Aquina. His son, Swade Griffin, is a second-year corner at Arizona. And according to Viney, the defensive backs coach, he's been the most quote-unquote improved player in the unit since the spring. So there's, I think, a lot of talent there. It's just, you know, one, probably not going to have the same success in terms of turnover rate, but can they still be effective? And that's something that I think historically Arizona has had. Maybe not 4 NFL players like that, but, I mean, can they still be effective enough and as they grow into this role for them this season?
And what if they are? What if they are just as effective? Maybe they don't lead the nation in takeaways and turnover margin, but what if they are a top 10 secondary nationally, like they have been the last couple of years? 2 years ago, I thought the secondary, which was the strength of their team when they were winning 4 games, you know, it was almost like they have to be okay at something. And then last year we saw just how dynamic that secondary is and how it was supplementing everything else. If their secondary is as strong as it was last year, to me that reframes Arizona in a big way. because they've got an experienced offensive line. They've got a preseason all-league quarterback. They've got a deep running back room. They have a very underrated wide receiver room that post-T-Mac was still catching passes in a bit and making plays. Like Richardson, Spivey, those guys are playmakers. I think that offense is underrated.
Yeah, no, well said. All right, Dion is in game week. This via Brian Howell from Buff Blitz. And, it's funny because this was a good reminder to me that TCU and North Carolina kick off the season on Saturday, but shortly thereafter, week 1 kicks off for the Big 12 on Thursday night in Atlanta with Georgia Tech and Colorado. So they're in game mode now 9 days before the start of Colorado's season. Quote, "We have a scouting report, we have stages, we have deadlines." This is via Dion. "We have points that we got to hit. We're right where we want to be. I like where we are, and we're right where we want to be. Everything is on the timeline. We're going to hit those marks strategically," end quote. The Buffs head to Atlanta on Tuesday, September 1st. It feels like, though, they're a lot more organized and put together in advance of the season than they were last year.
Which is a good thing, because that Georgia Tech game was ugly, week 1. And Georgia Tech has question marks this season. They have a new quarterback, Alberto Mendoza. He has not been a starter at this level. Colorado has more experience at the quarterback position than Georgia Tech. Now, their highest profile transfer is a running back, Justice Haynes, who's a transfer from Alabama and had almost 900 yards last season. But their offensive line lost their starting center because he transferred to Arizona State in this conference. Georgia Tech is a program that financially, like when you look at their recruiting classes, they're not spending at the level that Colorado is. Haynes King was their difference maker last year at quarterback. There were a lot of games that otherwise Georgia Tech loses if it's not for him. He was a playmaker. So to me, this is a coin flip game, much like it was last year. And I just think that Dion has learned a ton of valuable lessons over the last 2 seasons, and most notably over last year.
Dion was also asked about the potential distractions legally. So he's been subpoenaed to testify in a bankruptcy trial for his son Shiloh next week, which seems awfully quick to be already going bankrupt if you're Shiloh, but here we are. Dion's also being sued by his former graphic designer. He asked, quote, "Is that a distraction? Do you think that's my first subpoena?" Like when you have that, you get sued. You have all the off-field foolishness that if someone really sat down and explained it to you, they'd say, "You got to be kidding me," but it is what it is. I don't know anyone that's a game changer, way maker, that is not dealing with some type of lawsuit, end quote.
Dion's not worried about that stuff. Now, Shiloh's a spender.
Clearly.
Shiloh knows how to spend money. For a guy that's never played in the NFL and had his ankles broken by DJ Giddens 2 years ago in Boulder.
No, he's an NFL player. Just ask him.
Or any of the Sanders.
Yeah.
But, no, I don't think it's a distraction. That's par for the course for Dion. Dion doesn't have to be there. His attorney handles all that. His agents do all that for him. He doesn't walk into Big 12 football media days without an entourage.
Yeah. He's got people. He also says there's no nostalgia to go back to Atlanta. Of course, Dion was drafted by the Falcons, played for the Braves, and said, quote, "I have no nostalgia to me. Like, I'm not built like that. Like, if we went back to Fort Myers, Florida, I'd be happy. That's my hometown, but it's a game, man. That I want to win very badly. I don't waste cities. That city has some meaningful moments, but I don't waste cities. We're going there for one purpose, and that's to win whether I played there or not," end quote.
Like, he's saying all the right things. This, to me, sounds like a different Dion than what we've seen the last 3 years. I think last year, the health stuff can really change a person's perspective on life, and he's made comments about that. And then just losing football games, being 3-9. All of the doubters, all of the haters, the language he would use, come out of the woodworks to tell you that you were only good because your son and your other son, air quotes for Travis Hunter, were there. He seems dialed in.
Yep. The last piece of news for Colorado is Ezra Christensen, who could potentially be a huge factor on the defensive line for Colorado, has had his injunction denied. So as it stands, he is not going to be able to play football for Colorado in 2026. And it just feels like luck of the draw when it comes to the judge you get with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, different states, different judges, which is why it's so difficult to track.
Yeah.
Who's eligible? Who's not eligible? Who won their appeal? Who didn't? Like, it used to just be a stack of waivers for the NCAA. They had stacks and stacks of waiver requests. Now, players don't even go that route. They just say, I'll find a local judge who will grant me eligibility. Screw what the NCAA says.
Well, apparently that's not the case for Ezra Christensen, so we'll see if he can get eligible because he's a big-time player that Colorado was hoping to have this year. And when you look across the league and you've got tons of guys that are going to be suiting up that are under the same guidelines, it's really interesting. All right, moving along. What does success look like at Iowa State 2026? This written by the great Randy Peterson from Cyclone Fanatic. Randy poses the question, what constitutes a successful season for Iowa State this year? Enough wins to qualify for a lower-level bowl game, winning the Cyhawk for a third time in a row, 2 non-conference wins plus 2 in the Big 12, 2 non-cons plus 1 against someone in the Big 12, 2 non-cons and nothing in the Big 12. What does success look like? Randy writes that Matt Campbell, the winningest coach in Iowa State history, lost his Cyclones debut 25-20 against Northern Iowa in 2016. His first team went 3-9 and 2-7 in the Big 12. Only one of the past 10 coaches had a winning record during his first season at Iowa State. That was Paul Rhodes, going 7-6 in 2009.
I think that's really important context. Matt Campbell, 3-9, 2-7 in the Big 12. Gene Chizik, 3-9, 2-6 in the Big 12. Paul Rhodes inherited a team from Gene Chizik that was probably the best of the bunch, and he goes 7-6. To me, the only way that a lower tier, that a bowl game is in Iowa State's future, I think they would need to win the Cyhawk game. And right now, is that game in Iowa City?
Yes.
I think you're right. I think it is. Because right now, I remember looking at the schedule and thinking, like, okay, that's a loss. That game's always tight. It always goes down to the wire. I wouldn't be stunned to see Jalen Rayner have a huge game, to see Iowa State end up eking out a win, which would be...
It's in Iowa City.
Okay. Ginormous for the conference. Iowa State, I think, has had a bunch of success lately in Iowa City.
Well, I think they've won 2 straight overall and 3 straight in Iowa City. I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me. But so basically, every coach that's started at Iowa State has won either 3 or 4 games. So let me ask you this: over under 4 wins for Iowa State this year.
I'd put the number right at 4. I think they steal a couple of Big 12 games. I think they win 2 out of 3 in the non-conference. So what would a successful season look like to me? 5 or 6 wins. I mean, this roster was completely gutted. This is an entirely new roster, and he doesn't have the same number of transplants that Eric Morris does, or even Colin Klein at Iowa or Morgan Scalley at Utah, who inherited a lot of those guys because he was on staff. Like, his transplants are guys that played at the FCS level or played at Washington State, where they went 6-6.
Well, and that was going to be my question to you is, can we look back on the historical context here because of the new era that we're in and our expectations now in year one a lot higher and different than they used to be, because it used to be about getting, your guys, quote unquote, and now, I mean, Jimmy Rogers did it. He turned over a roster of his guys. Does that change any of this?
No, I think it does. Where the floor is not as low as it used to be. And the patience, there is no patience in college football anymore. So Eric Morris and Colin Klein and Morgan Scalley are expected to win 7, 8, 9 games in year one. But I think with Jimmy Rogers and what Matt Campbell meant to that program, I think the perspective is a little different. And the evidence is Jimmy Rogers going around part of their barnstorming tour, or tailgate tour, I think they call it, and being disgruntled by fans saying, yeah, if you win 5 or 6 games, we'll feel really good. It's like, no, that's not the expectation here.
Yeah, so what does success look like at Iowa State? And then finally, we've got Oklahoma State defensive coordinator Skylar Cassidy not worried about statistics. This via Eric Bailey from the Tulsa World. This is a really good piece because I think it cuts to the core of the question with Oklahoma State football. They have this quick strike offense. They're going to run a lot of plays, which puts a lot of pressure on the defense. Cassidy told Eric Bailey, quote, everybody likes to get hung up on the statistical dynamic of it, but we understand at the end of the day, when we jump out on a team and we have a big lead, we understand what's necessary to win the football game, right? If we know we want to play tight, Coach Morris is willing to punt the ball and pin them at the 1-yard line when we know that we're dialed in on defense. Bailey points out that North Texas's defense allowed 26.5 points per game last year, 78th in the country, and struggled stopping the run. Teams averaged 215.7 yards per game, which was 132nd out of 136 schools on the ground. They were also, the Mean Green's defense was on the field an average of 31 minutes, 37 seconds per game last season. Only 2 other Big 12 defenses were on the field longer last year, West Virginia and Cincinnati. So the question is, can that defense win in the Big 12? We focused so much on the offensive side, and while there's talent on defense, will it be enough?
Well, and the defense was on the field because the offense plays at
quickly
a NASCAR tempo. I mean, it is, to me, the fastest in the country. And when things are going well, they're scoring in less than a minute. I think North Texas led the country in scoring drives that were less than a minute. It is remarkable how fast they can find the end zone. And at the same time, it can also result in a very quick 3 and out. So the defense is on the field longer. And then you look at some of the competition that North Texas played. They played Army. They played Navy. Like, they played some teams that the opponent was always constantly trying to slow North Texas down. But the flip side of these numbers are the takeaways, most in North Texas history. The third down defense, really good last year. The way they blitz and just their goal every play is to confuse the opposing quarterback with their coverages and their blitz packages. They're always bouncing around before the snap. It's really helter-skelter. So the numbers aren't the whole story. I see the angle here that Eric Bailey took.
Quote, this is from Cassidy. Sometimes you're going to give up passing yards. Sometimes you're going to give up rushing yards. Sometimes you're going to force more turnovers. We have to understand that we're realistically going to play more possessions than a lot of teams on defense. So the depth and the trust that we have in our defensive unit, there are roles for a lot of football players to come out there and be successful. That's one we really, really stress. You mentioned the too high look that they give. It's that Vic Fangio style that a lot of teams are running. But what's important about that is you have to be able to stop the run one-on-one, basically. Like, your defensive line is committed to a gap and a half, they call it. And so what that means is, one guy is responsible for 1.5. So, you've got to be able to stop the run with your 4 down linemen and your 2 linebackers behind that. That's what allows you to be that versatile team where you've got a safety that's going to drop into the box or drop back into coverage. And it worked at North Texas. We'll see if it works for them in the Big 12. And they've got the hosses to run that Vic Fangio-style confusing defense, because it works until it doesn't.
It takes an incredible amount of patience from the opponent, because when North Texas is scoring at 48 seconds of possession and you get back out there and you're down by 2 scores, teams have a tendency to abandon the ground game.
All right, countdown to kickoff. BYU is on the way. Coming up next, though, let's get a view from the other sideline. TCU, North Carolina, Noah Weiskopf, reporter for Tar Heel 24/7, joins us next as we break down this TCU North Carolina game with James Amari. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
How did he get that off? How does McAllister stay up and keep cruising on? Real Hoover, McAllister.
Second and 5, pressure up the gut, looking for it, finding a pair of 8. It's McAllister picking them up, putting them down. Touchdown, TCU.
205-pound transfer from Boise State has been chopping at the bit to make a play. He goes on the go route, a perfect back shoulder, and the rest is all him. He is striking out down the sideline for a touchdown.
Time for Hoover, delivers a strike. McAllister off and running. Eric McAllister for the TCU touchdown.
Football. Josh Hoover's going to get it to Eric McAllister on a 5-yard slant. But Jalen Davis-Robinson, number 13, and Jaden Milner-Jones, number 11, both missed tackles.
McAllister, look out! Eric McAllister, touchdown TCU, 85 touchdown reception this year for McAllister, who's missed some games recently.
What a response. I mean, he just runs right past him. And a perfect throw by Hoover.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Saturday, TCU, North Carolina from Dublin. Joining us now to talk about the UNC side of things is Noah Weisskopf, who covers the Tar Heels for Tar Heel 24/7 and for the CBS Sports Network. Noah, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. Appreciate your time. Let's start with the drama. No shortage of drama around Chapel Hill and Bill Belichick and the North Carolina football program. This year, though, had nothing to do with his girlfriend. This one, Michael Lombardi, their GM, on indefinite leave. And then how about their defensive coordinator, Steve Belichick, on medical leave? What can you tell us about those two individuals and their involvement in the program right now?
Yeah, well, with the Michael Lombardi situation, it had said in the HR department that online that at least that it should not exceed 30 days, and Wednesday, tomorrow, is day 30. And normally in the writing when it says should, it shouldn't, but it probably will exceed the 30-day mark unless we get an announcement here today or tomorrow. So not really expecting anything, no real timeline on that. And it's honestly similar with Steve Belichick as well, who was available and at the first training camp session that media was available to go and watch, and he was there, and we were supposed to meet with him after practice, and we were told by the program that he was feeling under the weather. And then the next time we were there, a week later, Bill Belichick had told us that he was on medical leave. So that was really the end of it, and we haven't heard much else. We've continued to ask Bill for an update, where he is, what's going on, if he's going to be back for the season, and if not, and what the potential duties are, who's going to call plays, who's going to be in the booth, those kinds of things, and we haven't gotten much of anything. I think the wide expectation is that Bill Belichick is going to be the play caller, although there's definitely some other guys who have defensive coordinator play calling experience on their staff defensively, starting with Bob Diaco, the defensive line coach. So we'll just have to see. But no real update on Steve Belichick and when he'll be back, if he'll be back. Nobody really knows.
So Noah, what can you tell us about the players? And has there been any reports? Have you guys been able to watch any practices? Like, is this team going to be better than they were a season ago?
I have to think they will. To be honest with you, especially offensively, it's going to be hard for them to be worse, right? They were almost dead last in a handful of offensive categories last year under Freddie Kitchens, and you bring in a guy like Bobby Petrino with his experience and what he's done at the college level with offenses, especially in his first year, you have to assume they're going to be better. There's a ton of new players. Again, I think there was 70 last year going into Belichick's first year. This year there's 60, including 40 incoming freshmen. I think it's the second largest class in the country. So a lot of young guys, but they've also brought in a couple of starters and plugged some holes through the transfer portal with some veteran-type players who've been around the game a lot, starting with Billy Edwards, who they recently, a week ago today, actually named their starting quarterback. So it's hard to see a world in which they're worse. Now, that's on the field, right? Record-wise is a different story. We've talked a lot on our platform about their record and what it could possibly be with the schedule. They have one of the tougher schedules of anyone in the conference, and then you look at the country as a whole, they do still have a pretty tough schedule facing teams like Notre Dame, Miami, Louisville, all these teams in the ACC that they were able to avoid for the most part last year. So while they might finish with a comparable record, I think their on-the-field product is going to be a lot better.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it starts with the approach that they took, it appears, in this offseason to maybe go after high school recruits more so than the transfer portal. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, well, when Belichick got here, he's talked a lot about he kind of got there in the middle of everything, and he wasn't really able to bring in his first freshman class. It was kind of just stuff that was already there, and he just kind of had to fill in and figure it out before the season. And then with the spring portal last year, he just felt like they were way behind the eight ball on everything. He wanted this class to sort of almost serve as two, half of last year and then his class for this year. So that's why you saw the numbers. They want this class to be the foundation of their program for the next handful of years moving forward. And so that's why you saw the numbers like 40 incoming freshmen and that size of a recruiting class. So they want this to be the foundation of their program, and they feel like they're in a much better spot right now than they were a year ago.
How does the quarterback position look?
Well, Billy Edwards certainly has the experience factor, and we had talked to numerous sources in and around the program during the entire competition that they had, and Miles O'Neill gave Billy Edwards a real run for his money. This quarterback, we've been told, it was neck and neck until the very end. Some scrimmages ultimately were the deciding factor, but they felt the most comfortable with Billy Edwards because he's done it before. They've seen him do it before. In 2024, he was at Maryland as the starter, won a quarterback competition there, and then was second in the Big Ten that year in passing yards per game with 261. So he's done it before at a high level. He's proved that he can run an offense, and I think that at the end of the day is what they're looking for. And the real tell for him was he was the one that could eliminate negative plays the most. And for Belichick, he showed those quarterbacks a lot of Tom Brady tape. They've sat in the room and they've watched a ton of that. And the number one thing that they said Tom Brady did the best was eliminate the negative plays, take what's there, take what's given, and then through that you can then hit those explosive plays downfield.
Where is the North Carolina fan base with Bill Belichick right now? Like, what's the confidence level? What's the excitement level, especially relative to a year ago?
You know, I would say before preseason camp, before we really started diving in and getting our eyes on these guys and giving some reports, I would say that most of them were totally out on football and already ready for basketball season under Michael Malone. But since training camp has started, I think there's been some optimism within the fan base that while they know that these guys aren't going to make a run for the college football playoff, but they know that there's a chance at a bowl game, right? If you can get to 6-6, if you can get to that 7-win mark, which isn't crazy to predict. I might not necessarily predict it, but I think there's people out there that can find 6 wins on this schedule. And so I think there's a little bit of a sense of optimism that this process that Bill Belichick continues to talk about, the development of the program, that, you know, he talked a lot about it last year and then it wasn't showing up on the field. So I think fans got really frustrated, but I think some have started to buy into the process, the development, teaching the fundamentals, and just continuing to get better every day, which is something he harps on a bunch. So I think there's some optimism within the fan base that this thing could get turned around, and maybe in a year or two, these guys could be competing for an ACC title.
So Noah, with what you know and what you don't know, about this roster, when we're watching this game on Saturday, remind our audience, like, what are North Carolina's strengths, or what do you anticipate will be the strengths of this football team?
Yeah, well, for those who have watched a Bobby Petrino offense before, I think it's a lot of similarities to that. We have heard ad nauseum that they want to run the ball. And if they can't run the ball, their offense is going to struggle. And so I expect them to pound the rock until they can't, because they know that that's going to open up the passing game if they can start to rush the football. They've got really 3 running backs that they're probably going to use starting in week 0, at least 3, with Benjamin Hall was a transfer last year from Michigan, who is now one of their captains and someone that they really rely on in the running game. Damon June was a true freshman last year who really, in some ways, had a breakout season, had a couple of really big games, is a really powerful runner going into his sophomore year. He's on the Doak Award watch list for top running back in the country going into this year. And then their third running back, Jalen McGill, early enrolled at Carolina when he was 17 and now sort of has some experience and knows what it takes to be a power 4 running back. So if anything, I think you go into this game thinking that they are going to try and establish the rushing attack early and often to open up their offense and be able to pass the ball later in the game.
What's your expectation for the outcome of this game?
I picked TCU in all of our predictions. However, I think a lot of people look back to that game last year, including me, and obviously Bill Belichick talked a lot about it yesterday in his game week press conference before they head out to Dublin. They gave TCU 14 points, I think it was, offensively. They gave up turnovers for touchdowns that game. It just obviously didn't go well for Carolina in really any facet outside of the very first drive of the game, which there were some people probably in the stands that after that first drive Carolina drove down, scored, that thought they were going to the college football playoff at that point. But yeah, I think that I don't expect Carolina to win, but I think this one's going to be a lot closer than it was a year ago, especially with TCU and some of the changeover they've had, especially starting at quarterback. I'm a big Jaden Craig fan, but I'm excited to sort of see how he transitions, especially in the first game. I like him long-term, but I don't know how he's going to be right off the bat coming from Harvard.
Noah, this was, with all the college football landscape stuff, the eligibility, the Protect College Sports Act, conference realignment was kind of off the table this summer. So North Carolina, I remember we were talking about North Carolina once out of the ACC. They're pursuing the SEC. Just in terms of there locally, what's the sense of North Carolina's future?
I think with so many moving parts, I don't even think that they're necessarily thinking about that at the moment, especially right now before they head out to Dublin. This is the first time they've played, the longest game they've played in Hawaii in a bowl game, I believe. But this is their first time out of the country going to Dublin to play a game like this. So I mean, right now there aren't real rumblings of anything like that. I think it's a lot of wait and see, like a lot of things right now in college football. It's like a lot of wait and see, and let's see what actually are the new rules. Let's see if there are ever any new rules. We'll just have to wait and see.
Great stuff. Appreciate your time. Have a safe trip over to Dublin and enjoy the game. Noah Weiskopf, reporter for Tar Heel 24/7 at CBS Sports. Noah, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Great stuff, Noah. Thank you.
Noah Weiskopf giving us the North Carolina perspective. He said he's picking TCU, but that he thinks North Carolina will be considerably better this year than they were last year, especially from a talent perspective. Good stuff. All right, countdown to kickoff coming up. Also, some interesting developing story here is the Big Ten has made an official announcement that they are set to pass a rule that disallows players to return from the NFL and play for a Big Ten school. Anyone who was declared for the NFL draft and did not withdraw, appeared on an NFL roster, signed a contract with the Pro League, cannot be on a Big Ten roster. That according to Pete Thamel. Also, Ross Dellinger from Yahoo reporting that the SEC presidents are expected to direct ADs against accepting pro players under the threat of penalty per bylaws. Greg Sankey and or presidents hold authority to deem a player ineligible, fine, suspend coaches, etc. Will they? Quote, "This is Sankey's Sorsby moment," says one person.
Interesting. The turntables have turned. Athletic directors and commissioners and coaches not getting along. I'm here for this tea.
Yeah.
And the SEC, they are meeting today in Birmingham. Now, this is an annual thing. It's not this. It's not a meeting of the elites underground, but they do this every year.
I mean, it is, but it's not on. It's not on accident. It didn't just come up.
This will be a major talking point within those discussions. And Lane Kiffin claims that he's got an NFL tight end that just cleared waivers. Was like a former Ole Miss tight end who looks like an NFL dude.
Yeah, I think
apparently he thought he was going to land at LSU.
And I think he's the guy that ripped Lane Kiffin on his one when Lane Kiffin was on his way out. But what I have yet to really find out is it's easy for these presidents and commissioners to sit up there and create this rule. The question is whether or not they're enforceable via courts, right? If there's a court order that says he's allowed to play, and they're saying, well, he can't play based on our bylaws, is that tortious interference? I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea, but it feels like you're not allowed to interfere with an injunction in that situation.
And do the coaches say, okay, we don't care what you say, we've got the injunction, he's playing? And what are the penalties? And are there penalties from the conference itself? Real interesting dynamic developing there.
Countdown to kickoff. BYU is next with James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
On 3rd and 12, backside heat, fumbled it, it came out. Ball's on the ground. Cougars recover at the 5. Big hit by Jack Kelly.
3rd and 16. Jordan over the middle again. It's caught by Alvarez, but he's going to be taken down at the 39. It's to the holder. Here's the kick. It's blocked. And BYU trying to run it back here. Jack Kelly, who just made the defensive play. And now he does this.
Pressure coming from Kelly. Dampier hit and down he goes. Jack Kelly may have sealed it for BYU.
Inside pressure on Hauser, and he's dropped. Jack Kelly, it was just a matter of time.
For the season, getting worked on here. Backside pressure. Hauser feels it, will not get away. And that is number 2 for Jack Kelly.
On the draw, dangerously close to being a safety. Micah Ford hit by who else? The ubiquitous, ever-present Jack Kelly. Salter flushed out, being spotted, dragged down at the 38-yard line by Jack Kelly.
Countdown to kickoff. This is our 16th of 16. We've been spending the last couple of weeks going over, breaking down everything to know about each Big 12 team and our countdown to kickoff, taking a look at the what we know, what we don't know, what has to happen for each team to contend, camp battles to watch, injury news, depth chart locks, and are they the favorite? Let's break down BYU now, the final team we have in this series. And I mean, I think we start with the most highly anticipated season maybe in the history of BYU's football program. What do we know? Well, they've got the most continuous roster in the Big 12. And that was deliberate. This was a Pop-Tarts Bowl winning BYU team. They beat Georgia Tech 25-21. And rather than add an influx of new players to the portal, they were heavy on roster attainment and development for guys underneath that. So I think that's a big part of what BYU is trying to do, what they want to do, and what they're doing now.
Yeah, we also know that they got crushed by the one team on their schedule that gave them losses last year in Texas Tech. They got beat 29-7, and then they got beat 34-7 in the Big 12 title game. So the question for me is, has BYU closed that gap, and has BYU expanded the separation between them and everybody else not named Texas Tech in this league? Because BYU last year had a ton of really close games. They beat Colorado by a field goal in Boulder, a 3-9 football team. They beat Arizona in double overtime. They beat Utah by a field goal. And then they beat Georgia Tech in their bowl game by 4. So they had 4 wins. 4 of their 11 wins were decided by 4 or less points. And that doesn't include some games like at Cincinnati. They had a game at Iowa State that was close until a turnover created some separation late in the contest. So that's the big question for me is, has BYU created that separation between them and everybody else and inched closer to Texas Tech's level? Then the other thing that we know is that LJ Martin's just an absolute dude.
Yeah.
For 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. What we don't know with him is, how did that offseason shoulder surgery impact him, or did it in any way, shape, or form? Is he truly bigger, stronger, faster, like everybody's going to say their starting running back is before the season?
Yeah, the other thing that we know is that, they're not exactly underrated, which is something we've talked a lot about. Like, is the perception right about BYU? BYU is AP top 25. They're ranked 14th in the preseason poll. It's the highest preseason ranking, and the second highest preseason ranking in the history of BYU's football program. 85 when they were number 10 preseason is the only other highest number in terms of the preseason ranking. So, we might think of BYU as being underrated nationally, and maybe in some ways they are, but certainly heading into the season, 14th from an AP perspective, second highest rated ever in the preseason poll, says a lot. All right, what do we not know?
Well, I would say we don't know if Bear Bachmeier can complete down the field passes. His passing numbers to the sideline, beyond 15 yards downfield, towards the bottom of the league. Everything was underneath, and they had those really explosive wide receivers like Parker Kingston, who's no longer with the team, like Chase Roberts, who had been there forever. Can Bear Bachmeier take that next step where he's less game manager and more playmaker for BYU? And then we don't know about the wide receiver room as a whole. Who are the front runners there? We don't know if the defense, under a new defensive coordinator, because Jay Hill is now at Michigan, if the defense will be as rock solid as it's been the last couple of seasons. So I do think there are some question marks.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of question marks, quite honestly. We don't know about the receiver room. Can this receiver room produce against top 25 secondaries? I mean, it's big. It's got good size. It's been productive in camp, but it's untested and unproven. BYU's top 3 pass catchers from 25, Chase Roberts, Parker Kingston, Cody Hagan, all gone. And 2 of the 3 left after the January portal window, which is why they weren't really able to rebound with the losses there through the portal. Roderick said in the group, quote, "I don't think anybody in the country is going to have a bigger group than we have. We have great size, and I really like the way we're executing." So size is the big claim. We also don't know about the status of Faletau Satuala, who is their best defensive player. They expect him to be ready week 1. August 10th, Kelly Papinga said Satuala, quote, "has not yet been practicing this month. I think we're right on schedule, and I think he will be back sooner than everybody thinks. But at this point, as of August 24th, he has not played or practiced yet. So we'll see if he's really going to be available for week 1. He broke his foot in June in a scooter accident and has not been able to practice since then. So this was the number 1 tackler on BYU, arguably their best defensive player. Huge loss that he has not been with them throughout the fall, and hopefully they get him back for the start of the season. We also don't know about Kelly Papinga's defense. I mean, Jay Hill is a proven defensive coordinator, proven commodity. We've heard the right things about Kelly, and I think just the knowledge that we have about Kalani Sitake and how good he is at developing players and coaches, like Kelly Papinga should be able to pick up right where Jay Hill left off, but it remains to be seen if he can. So yeah, I think those are some of the big things we don't know about, especially Satuala. All right, what has to happen for BYU to contend or win the Big 12?
Well, and this kind of plays back to what we don't know. They have to be better at getting to the quarterback. Their defensive line, for the most part, comes back. Justin Kirkland, the defensive tackle, who was a transfer from Oklahoma State 2 years ago. Keanu Tanuvasa is probably their most experienced defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Nusi Tiampapeo is a defensive end who's expected to start with Bodie Schoonover on the other side of that defensive line. They were not elite at getting to the quarterback. They applied pressure because they're massive up front. But in terms of actually getting those sack numbers, those TFLs, I think that's the next step for them. To contend, that's a big one for me. If you can apply that type of pressure, they have, to me, a top 2 secondary. I think maybe even the best secondary in the Big 12. Evan Johnson is a future pro. Alexander's a future pro. If they can get Satuala back healthy, he's an All-American safety. They're just loaded in the back end. But then they need explosive plays offensively. You know, there weren't a ton of explosives last year. And when they were broken tackles in the backfield, the guys off to the races. So do they have those type of playmakers that will emerge this season for them to take that next step offensively?
Yeah, I've got 3 things, some of them based on what you just talked about. Number 1 is survive the turnover regression, do it with the new coordinator. Remember, they were plus 12 in the turnover margin, and that's probably the least repeatable stat from a 12-win season a year ago. But remember, the last 2 years, they've been major in the plus category for turnover, so they're due for some turnover regression here. This was a team that had a lot of success based upon their turnover rate, their turnover luck. The offense ranked 37th in success rate, 20th in points per drive. So they go 12-2 based on having those free possessions that the defense was able to create. We'll see if they can finish, put that up again. If they finish somewhere around +4, +6, but they score more points, then you're good. But if they don't, then you're probably looking at a 8 or 9 win season, a huge disappointment relative to preseason expectations.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is Bear Bachmeier's new dimension, quote unquote. Bear Bachmeier set a BYU school record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback with 11 and was one of 28 FBS quarterbacks with 3,500 plus total yards. But it was designed quarterback runs were a big part of the identity of the offense last year. The new angle to Bear Bachmeier is his ability to extend plays with his legs. So now it's about going through your progression, going through your reads, finding the right read, and if it's not there, take it off with your legs. That's a big part of what he's going to be able to do this year and a big part of their success if they're able to have it. And the last one is finishing drives, which I think number 2 plays into this. The most documented flaw in the 2025 team was their red zone woes. In 2025, BYU converted just 61% of red zone trips into touchdowns. That was 69th in the country. They kicked a lot of field goals. They need to finish drives to touchdowns this year, and that speaks to the wide receiver questions. Kyle Casper, Walker Lyons, those guys have size. Can they finish the red zone? And then I think Bear Bachmeier's ability to use his legs to extend plays.
Yeah, Kyler Casper is the ideal red zone target because he's 6'6", and he's a safety valve now for Bear Bachmeier. 3rd and 5, you just lob it up to that guy. I mean, he is ginormous, but he's battled injuries over the course of his career and didn't get on the field much at Oregon. And the receiver room, we bring up guys like Chase Roberts, Parker Kingston. They also lost Cody Hagan. And Cody Hagan was their track star, who was probably their fastest wide receiver. He had to retire from football altogether back in May with a chronic knee issue. So they lost their top 3 receivers. they've supplemented that position nicely in the portal, and I love their tight end room. Their offensive coordinator, Aaron Roderick, said that those tight ends are two of the best players on the entire team, and their offensive line. You know, that's one group that we just know is going to be solid. But is it national championship college football playoff caliber? Is it a top 2, top 3 offensive line in the Big 12? They've got the experience, they've got the pieces, but with that offensive line, that should allow for more explosive plays. If your quarterback has more time to throw, if LJ Martin has larger holes to run through, like naturally there should be more explosives than what we have seen.
All right, camp battles. What are some of the camp battles you're watching for?
Yeah, I would definitely go to the wide receivers. You know, they've got JoJo Phillips, Kyler Casper, and Tiger Bachmeier projected to start. Legend Glasker is a freshman whose brother's a all-league linebacker on the other side of the ball who's expected to factor in. It looks like Paki Finau has locked down the left tackle position, the transfer from Washington. They're going to play both tight ends, so who's listed as tight end 1 versus tight end 2 is irrelevant to me because I think they're both going to be on the field. So I would start there. Wide receiver is definitely the biggest open position back.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a lot of these spots, these battles are being finalized here, so not much in terms of overall battles, but depth pieces. Looks like Cannon DeVries is going to be your nickel corner as well as punt returner, so I think there will be some new faces. Preston Rex, is he RB3? He's a guy that Aaron Roderick has mentioned. He's going to be a major factor in the running game. Is he RB2, RB3? So I think that's really where the biggest battles are. What about injuries?
Yeah, the big one was Cody Hagan, and then Satuala, who you noted, the starting safety. He was in a scooter accident. They say he's going to be available week 1, but that's a little bit of a dicey situation there. You know, I'm looking at their schedule, and if they're undefeated going into the Notre Dame game, which is on October 17th, that means they will have beaten Arizona. They will have won at Colorado State. They will have won at TCU. If they're undefeated going into that Notre Dame game, that's a top 10 matchup, and I think puts BYU in the driver's seat to be a college football playoff team.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. On the way next, we talk with our friend Greg Wrubell of the BYU Radio Network. We go countdown to kickoff with Greg Wrubell next. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Bachmeier delivers, caught miraculously by Chase Roberts. Comfortable in the pocket here. Chase Roberts turning it, coming the other way, inside the 30, and Chase Roberts.
And it is a bookstore, but it's really a museum.
Well, they might put that one in the museum one day. Good catch by Chase Roberts. At BYU, 5 minutes to go in the first. Bachmeier surveys, pulls, touchdown Cougars. Mr. BYU, Chase Roberts.
Off the RPO, what a strike. Chase Roberts chugging across the 40, tight ropes the sideline, and finally pulled down by Darian Lewis at the 4-yard line.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. He is James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. Our countdown to kickoff BYU continues with Greg Wrubell, voice of BYU. Greg, how are you, buddy?
Ari, I'm great. Good morning to you. Good morning, James.
Hey, Greg.
All right, so we just did our series, or our portion of the BYU countdown to kickoff. And I think, the biggest thing top of mind right now is the status of Satuala. What can you tell us about Satuala and his status?
Yeah, he's in great shape. Pacing as expected. Me personally, and this is just me talking as an observer. If you don't think you need him to beat Utah Tech, don't play him against Utah Tech, and save him. Give him just as much possible time as his body can take to get ready for Arizona on September 12th. Now he's progressing well. I'm not saying he's not, because he's out there. He's not activating fully, but he's there. He's padded up. He's doing all the things you want to do. But if you can spare him for a week, get through that Utah Tech game and play him against Arizona. That's just me. Now the coaches may want to get him some game action because he should be ready to go, I think, for week one. But I guess the cautious person in me wants to save him. That said, I think he'll be ready to go if the coaches were to want to play him.
Greg, we just went through some position battles to watch in camp. What are the top position groups that you think are open or have been settled that were maybe open going into fall camp?
Well, I think he wanted to find out who your top wide receivers were. That was the biggest question, I think. JoJo Phillips, as a returner, had an inside track to a job, obviously. But after him, it was pretty wide open, I think. And you see Kyler Casper really step up, Legend Glasgow step up, Reggie Frischneck stepped up as well and ran with the ones for a lot of camp. And right there is Tiger Bachmeier. So if I were to list the top 5 right now, those would be your guys. Terrence Saryan made a late move in camp. He's looked good. Tana Kua, younger brother of Puka, has been in the program a while. He's had some nice looks. He's probably in that 6-7 range right now. So to me, the biggest question was who could catch the ball from Bear Bachmeier. Now, we mentioned wide receivers. Tight end was the other area where you had some guys back in Need and Moiaki, et cetera. But they bring in Sali Aponga from Oregon. They bring in Lyons from USC. And those two guys are the top 2 tight ends now for BYU. So while they are new faces, you could see all new top receivers for BYU this year. I would not be surprised if by the end of the year it's Sali Aponga and Lyons and Phillips and Casper. And I want to throw in Glasgow because he's been really good. The cousin of Isaiah Glasgow, Legend Glasgow. Those 5 guys, in some order, should probably be your top 5 targets at BYU.
Cousin, not brother.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, good to know. Defensively, this team has been extremely opportunistic the last couple of years. They're plus 12 in turnover margin last year. They were really good the year before that. Is that Jay Hill? Is that the defense? Do you think Papinga and that defense will be able to pick up? Kind of give us a sense here of that turnover number.
Yeah, the biggest component in the turnover number has been the INTs, right? They were 20th in INTs in Jay's first year, all the way to 1st in his second year, 9th in his third year. So in all 3 years, they were very good in the secondary, very good across the field in creating interception turnovers. They weren't the biggest pressure team in the world, and that might change a bit, I think, this year. I get a sense that the sacks number could look a little different. Excuse me, look a little different. Guys, I'm just recovering from a cold throat thing, and so I'm just kind of grinding through here a little bit, so I beg your pardon.
You're the best. Thank you, buddy.
Sacks per game. Under Jay, first year they were 132nd, almost dead last. Then to 109th, then to 62nd. So while they improved, that still wasn't a huge part of their defensive signature. I think with the guys they have this year, including Nusi Tamuepeo and Tausili Akana and Hunter Clegg and Vilipo Uha, those numbers could come up a little bit, but they're not necessary, right? We saw how BYU was such a good turnover creating team without being the biggest sack team in the world. In fact, I think probably compensated by giving up a little bit in pressure by getting so much on the back end.
So, Greg, can you break down what could lead to more sacks? Is it a combination of the play calling and the personnel, or has there been an uptick when it comes to the personnel that's there?
Well, I think it's finally time for Nusi Tamuepeo to shine. I think he's a special player on the edge. And I think Tausili Akana, the Texas transfer, is another guy that I think talent meets scheme here. I think we might see, and this is just an impression, right? You see a certain part of camp, you get impressions. There's a versatility and a multiplicity to BYU's looks defensively that I think just could create a little more havoc. Then when you throw in the level of talent, which I think is there in Telmoy Peau and Akana, and even there's an edge rusher, plays kind of a hybrid linebacker edge role in Braxton Lindsay. No one knows about him. He could be a factor as well. I like what they've got in terms of people, and I think in terms of scheme, Kelly Papinga and Gary Anderson will be scheming aggressively for this BYUD.
Who are some guys that have popped in camp that maybe aren't, known or well known nationally?
Well, I think that Legend Glasgow, as a true freshman, made a serious impression from day one. He's an exciting wide receiver, makes a lot of plays. They use him in different ways. Legend jumped out to me. Kyler Casper, we have to say Kyler because he had injury issues at Oregon, never really made a huge impact there. I think he'll make a huge impact for BYU because he's healthy. He is 6'6", can box guys out. Just a real. In fact, I don't know. The BYU's had a taller receiver core than they've got right now. And then those tight ends. Salia Ponga again. He had a touchdown in a high-profile playoff game for Oregon last year, but I think he'd be a surprise guy too because nobody saw a ton of him. He and Lyons are as good a tight end duo as it appears that BYU's had in some time. So offensively, those are easy places to go. I think it's important to note that BYU got themselves a left tackle in Pucky Finau from Washington. That's a big addition. He's projected to start at left tackle right now opposite Andrew Gentry. So in Finau and Gentry, you've got a pair of P4 transfers working at left and right tackle. The defense, I think, in terms of surprise names, so many of the guys are just back, right? But I think what might surprise people this year is how big of a step Keanu Talabasa and Justin Kirkland take inside. They were very big gets for BYU last year out of Utah and Oklahoma State, respectively. Maybe didn't have the impact everyone hoped they would have. I think they're both slated to have bigger impacts inside on the D-line here in 2026.
How would you describe Casper's skill set? I mean, being 6'6" is definitely the headline, but is he fast? Is he going to be a red zone target? How is his route running? Just break down his game for us.
Yeah, yes, and very good would be my answers to your three questions there. No, it really, you especially look for him in the red zone. When I mentioned box out, that's kind of a good tactic for him when he gets there. He's got a great radius because of his height, and his hands are good. He looks like an Oregon wide receiver. And I think, BYU's fortunate that he maybe didn't have the 2 years he hoped he would have, but those were areas, not related to speed or skill or size for sure. So I'm excited to watch him. And I keep going back to Glasgow because he just looks different. For a true freshman to come in to an Aaron Roderick offense and gain early trust to be running with the ones like kind of from the get-go, that's a huge affirmation from this offensive staff about his potential talent. We haven't even gotten to Bear and LJ and the great things happening in the backfield, because that's so kind of set and solid right now. But I don't see any reason why Bear Bachmeier can't improve all of his numbers from last year. And his numbers were very, very good, guys. We've probably talked about this before, but, in the last quarter century of Division I football, no true freshman had a 3,000-yard passing and 500-yard rushing season at the quarterback spot till Bear Bachmeier. So he's doing special things already, but I can see that 3,500 number go to 4,000, the 3,000 number go to 3,500. The rush number should stay pretty solid. His passing touchdown should go from 15 to closer to 25. Pass efficiency from 140 to maybe 150. These should be steps we can expect from Bear Bachmeier. He's so smart. He is so composed. He's a little lighter than last year. He's got a unique quarterback body. We know that. But he's told me at Big 12 Media Days, I'm a little slimmer, but I've still got, what he say? I've still got my armor, is what he said. I've still got my armor. And he's going to need that armor to run. Doesn't run a lot of in camp, of course. Of course, quarterbacks with the green jersey off limits. But when it's time to make a play, Bear's not going to stop being a runner, but he's going to be an even better passer than he was last year. Aaron can give him so much to do and trust that he can make the right decision almost every time. Last year, remember, guys, he was coming out of Stanford spring football into BYU training camp. And then to become the starting quarterback at BYU from day one of year one, true freshman year, to do what he did, I don't know if enough attention was paid to it, quite frankly. Almost every other week he was the Big 12 Freshman of the Week. We know that. That showed up. But I think there's even more in the tank for Bear Bachmeier.
Yeah, well said, Greg. It's funny. It feels still like an undertold story Where do you see Bachmeier improving? Where are areas of his game that he needed to and that you've seen throughout the offseason?
Yeah, again, not inaccurate. He wasn't inaccurate, but I think his percentage can climb up a good 5 to 8%. Pass efficiency was just under 140. Again, I think that'll be closer to 150. The passing touchdown number, I think, can come up, as I noted, in kind of a big way, thanks in part to the tools he has around him. I really just think it's an overall quarterback operation, procedure, speed that will increase for him. It's just he can do more because he knows more. He's comfortable with more. This was a graduated process for him last year, and they had to be graduated with him. They couldn't just throw it all at him. Now they can give him everything. So I think the fact that he had so little to work with, they just expanded his toolbox. He was doing what he could with like a single hammer, and now he's got all the other tools in the box to go with that. He's got a variety of wrenches. He's got all the different pliers you'd want. He's got everything you'd want in a toolbox to get many jobs done, where he was so isolated in what he could do last year. By the end of the year, he was doing a lot more, but now he's doing almost everything any experienced quarterback would want to do at BYU.
Greg, looking at BYU's schedule, pre-Notre Dame game on October 17th, got Arizona at home, at Colorado State, at TCU in the mix. Which game is, you think, going to be the most challenging for BYU and why?
Yeah, so if we were to look at BYU's, let's say, 4 most challenging games, which include Notre Dame, 2 of the 4 happened before Notre Dame. Yeah. That's Arizona home in week 2 and at TCU in the first weekend of October. Arizona's good, guys. You know this. You've been treating them as well, treating their knowledge as well as anybody. You know what Arizona's got coming back, with Fifita, quarterback, head coach, coordinators, everybody back that way. To have them at Provo is pretty big because a week 2 game for both teams. Coach Brennan said, I hate that it comes when it does, but it's a great way to get ready, for the early part of the season. So we find out a lot about both teams in week 2. That's an early linchpin game for BYU. Glad it's in Provo and not in Tucson. BYU got out of Tucson with a double overtime thriller last year. So Arizona, if we're to concede that Notre Dame's the toughest game maybe on the schedule, I go to Arizona as second, and then I go to Utah at third, which is on the back end. But then I come back to TCU as the 4th toughest game on paper right now. BYU's history in Fort Worth isn't glittering of late. And that's going to be a challenge to open the month of October. So, 2 really tough games, one in September, one in October before we even get to Notre Dame. But if I were to list those 4, like I just shared, they'll be kind of like the 4 kind of linchpin games. Not that there are soft spots, not that there are gimmies. Everybody's got a reason to present worry in the Big 12. How crazy is it, guys, that Oklahoma State goes from 0 for everything in the last 2 years, 1-11 last year? People are thinking of them as a surprise team in 2026. Excuse me. I saw in The Athletic today, they had them 22nd in their top 25. How many 1-11 teams get ranked 22nd the next year by anybody? So it shows where Oklahoma State is, for example. So no soft spots in the Big 12 and danger all over the place.
All right, before I let you go, BYU will win the Big 12 if?
Oh, gosh. If I'm leaving Notre Dame out of it because it doesn't factor into the conference record. If they can get through the schedule, regular season schedule with 1 loss, I feel good about getting to Arlington, win or lose against Notre Dame.
Wow. Great stuff as always, Greg. Thanks for jumping on with us, especially with as you have this cold. So thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, sorry guys for all the throat clearing and whatnot. I'm doing the best I can, and the season hadn't even started yet. Maybe I'm getting it out of the way early, so that's maybe a good sign. So, thanks guys.
Thank
Greg. You. Greg Wrubell, voice of the BYU Cougars, joining us here on our countdown to kickoff for BYU. Some great stuff there, as always, from Greg. Greg always uncovers the most interesting and noteworthy statistics on these things.
Yeah, he's an analytical guru, and I love that aspect of it. He's also a really high energy, very descriptive play-by-play announcer. I've always admired his work, and he made me feel better about the wide receivers. I mean, it sounds like Casper is a dude. 6'6", fast, can run, great route runner, red zone target. I mean, that's maybe the missing piece to what Bear Bachmeier needed last year and needs this year. I mean, to think that they have a receiver who is bigger than Chase Roberts, who was their leading receiver a season ago, is hard to wrap your mind around. And really good things in Provo.
That is James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. All right, so what's the latest with the Big 12 and these former NFL prospects? That's next. It's Big 12 Today.
Seems to be doing okay right now. As Bear Bachmeier's pass is complete for a first down to Carson Ryan. Had big chunk yard runs here tonight, though. 2 in the 40s, 1 in the 50s. Now for the end zone. Ryan! Oh, he has it. What a catch. Touchdown.
On Instagram, 1.3 million followers. It's a phenomenal museum with books from the last 600 years.
Well, the book on this offense is that it has a lot of potential. Ryan making the catch for the first down.
Retzloff from the program. Bachmeier began to start. Bear will throw another open man. Carson Ryan strolling in for the touchdown. Ryan's second of the season.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. James Westling, Ari Temkin. So the conferences are fighting back. The Big 10, according to Pete Thamel, passed a rule today that does not allow players to return from the NFL to play for a Big 10 school. Anyone who was declared for the NFL draft that did not withdraw, appeared on an NFL roster, or signed a contract with the Pro League cannot be on a Big 10 roster. The Big 12, according to Ross Dellinger, also considering a league-wide policy banning pro players returning to the conference. So the ACC and SEC also aligned on this. We'll see what happens, and then the legal fallout from it. The most egregious offender at this point in time would be Lane Kiffin, LSU. So we'll see how they fight back. I don't think this affects Thomas Castellanos at all.
Would not.
Does, though, impact players just added by Houston, including Miles Rouser, who was, and this is where there's a level of ambiguity. So he did not get drafted. He did declare, so maybe that's the one that sort of disallows him. He was with the Seahawks for a mini camp, but I could see no other indication that he spent any other time with any other franchises.
Did he play in a preseason game?
No.
He did not.
He's not been on a training camp roster.
I mean, if he didn't play, to me, that might be a loophole.
But it all goes to the legal part of this. If there's an injunction that says that they can play, then the courts say that they can play regardless of what any conference tries to decide in terms of their bylaws.
Yeah, and Ross Dellinger is all over this stuff, does a phenomenal job, and he highlights a track athlete. And before I get into this, we've been wondering, where's that money coming from for these guys to be added to these rosters this late in the process? A lot of schools don't have 6 figures or 7 figures for some just lying around. They have built their roster.
Right.
And I'm not sure what school this is in particular, but there was a track athlete, a female track athlete at a power conference school. When they added a football player, she had her scholarship revoked. They pulled her scholarship, literally sent her to the bank. She's an aspiring med student. She needed to extract a $30,000 loan now to cover her tuition after that scholarship was taken away. That's just one example and a peek behind the curtain as to what's happening. And I think a big driving factor for why these conferences are now seem to be aligned on trying to prevent this.
Well, and every action there's an equal or greater reaction, and that's what this is, right?
Huge domino effect.
Yeah, it's really disappointing that you'd remove a scholarship athlete from another sport in order to make room for the football player. I don't know if that's just how can we add this player without adding more of a cost, right? Or if it was we can literally not add another scholarship athlete in order to make this roster whole. You'd hope at some point that people would hold these schools accountable to not be doing stuff like that, because that's dreadful.
And Lane Kiffin has been the front runner, the guy at the head of the pack for exploiting this rule. And not only is he adding or attempting to add this NFL tight end, now he's expected to add New Orleans Saints and ex-Ole Miss star defensive lineman Xavion Harris, 6'8", 330 pounds, who was all SEC last year at Ole Miss.
Yeah. And it's also funny, too, that this stuff was happening last year in basketball, and yet nobody really made a peep about it. But suddenly in football, it's a huge issue. Look, at the end of the day, every college athlete, every college football player that plays at the Power Four, every one of them believes they're going to play at the NFL. Every one of them thinks they're going to play at the NFL. The reality is, 1% of them are going to play in the NFL. And so, a huge part of me just goes back to this idea of, if you declared and still had eligibility left, that's on you. Because you did not understand that, as good as you think you are, you're not good enough to play at the next level. The league is littered. College football is littered with guys that think they're going to get to league and are not. It's a math problem, guys. Like, I hope that all of them have some semblance of an understanding of, like, make your money now, stay as long as you possibly can, and then, see if you can get to league, but chances are you're not going to be able to. It's 1%. Like, this is 1% of the high school athletes play at Power 4 level of Division I college football, and then 1% of those get to the NFL. The numbers are just astounding, right? So I think a huge part of this is just this idea of, like, you've left eligibility on the board here, you've committed, you committed to going pro, and yet you're not going to.
Yeah.
And you've suddenly realized that when the league has told you that.
Same for college basketball players.
Yes, even more so. The numbers are even more stark there. There's 53-man rosters in the NFL. There's 12-man rosters in the NBA.
There's only 60 draft picks in the NBA, but we are starting to see a shift where more guys are playing out their eligibility in college versus declaring early for the NBA. With the college early entries this year, I think was around 70, whereas just the previous season it was well over 300. And again, there's only 60 spots in the NBA draft. Did you just get a MAPS notification?
Yeah.
Me too.
Bizarre.
My phone's on Do Not Disturb. That's the first time that's ever happened.
I don't know why it felt that important to tell me about that.
It's very important.
Very important.
Take an alternate route home. That's what it's telling us. But James Najee, like, think about the public outcry for James Najee playing at Baylor, where he averaged 3 or 4 points per game because he had been drafted, never signed an NBA contract, never played in an NBA game, didn't even play in the NBA Summer League. He stayed overseas.
Well, and here's the ultimate question. What is eligibility?
Right.
What should eligibility be?
And the door just keeps getting more and more open. You know what the next step's going to be? The next step will be guys that are 23 or 24 years old that are actually playing in the NBA or the NFL. Not just preseason. They've been in the league trying to find loopholes to come back to college.
So let me ask you this. So I think, forever it was, well, you've got to be a college athlete, right? You're in college, you're taking classes. That's what makes you eligible, and you've got a certain window to do that, so there's an age piece to it. What should eligibility be? What should it be? Should we have 23-year-olds that are playing in the G League that come and play college basketball? Should we have guys that test the NFL waters but don't seem to think they can make it work, come back? What should eligibility be?
That's not college sports. College sports should be you're enrolled, you're taking classes, you're on campus, even if you're doing it all remote and online. And there should be an age-based window, which is what the NCAA has proposed and passed through, and why this class of 22 ruling was even implemented in the first place. I like the eligibility model. I didn't like when Chris Winkie was leading Florida State to national championships at the age of 30. That just felt off to me, and it's surprising that it took this long for everybody to catch on and find these loopholes. It used to just be, oh, you played Major League Baseball. There were a handful of guys that did that. Brandon Whedon did it at Oklahoma State. Winkie was the big one. Russell Wilson did it at NC State and Wisconsin. But it was few and far between. And this is trying to make that, although a different way, the model moving forward.
Well, and I guess my question to you is, it sounds like what you're saying, like 5 for 5 is probably the best way to do it.
I like it.
So the rule the NCAA has implemented is the best approach, in your mind?
As a fan, yeah. I mean, 27, 28, 29-year-old players, to me, that's not college athletics.
And it does feel, too, like there's got to be an element of, like, once you declare, once you've entered into the draft, you're gone.
Yeah, they need to add that in, too.
If you've got eligibility left and you leave and it doesn't work out for you, sorry, you got bad advice. Probably should have listened to the numerous statistics out there that showed you that you might not make it. There's a good chance you're not going to. Stay as long as you possibly can in college to get – because, like, that's where I think, playing 5 years and being 22, 23 that way, to me, is way better than this. Like, well, I tried to go to an NFL training camp and couldn't make it work, so now I'm coming back. Huh?
And they're coming back because they're getting paid.
Yeah.
It's a job. It's a profession. Now, the devil's advocate of our take on this would be you and I at our age today could go back to school. We could go back to school. We could take classes. We could get another degree. That would make us a college student, right? So the pushback is, well, if you can do it for that, for your job, why can't a student athlete or an individual do it to attempt to get a degree and play college sports? But to me, that's what makes college athletics special, is it's not professional sports. There is that attachment, that emotional aspect of college athletics. The school that you went to, the school that you attend, there's pride with that. Whereas in professional sports, the players are better, they're more talented. It's sometimes more entertaining to watch, and it's why so many people love the NFL. But you don't have that emotional attachment that you have as a student and as a fan and an alumni.
Yeah, I'm just reading on Dellinger. He says, important to note that league-wide rules do not absolve a conference from legal challenges, which is what we talked about. In fact, conferences will likely now be sued by athletes as defendants in separate lawsuits or added as defendants in existing lawsuits, many times in front of the same judges. If and when this happens and conferences are enjoined from enforcing their league-wide policies, the conference commissioner and or his presidents will then need to determine how aggressive they will be on sanctioning schools directly for paying an ineligible athlete.
Like, it never ends. It never ends. There's always something.
Always.
Players suing conferences. How does this move the needle, or what type of an impact does this have from the conference commissioners and the leagues themselves on the Protect College Sports Act? That is now a question that is boiling in my brain.
Yeah, no, should be a lot of interesting stuff to come, and certainly we'll have a lot to say on it tomorrow. Scott Draper, the Vice President of football, joins us on tomorrow's show from Dublin. Thanks, as always, to our great producers, Anthony Smith over with Big 12 Studios, David Turner, T-Chains with Tune In. Thanks to James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. Big 12 Today is back tomorrow, presented by Modelo with Scott Draper. But for now, we're out. Peace.